Thanks. Welcome everyone to the City of Boulder Transportation Advisory Board meeting for the month of February 2023. Veronica, as our technical host, do you want to go over the meeting rules?
Yes. Let me know if you can see my screen.
Yep.
Okay, perfect. Hello, everyone. We're pleased to have you join us today to strike a balance between meaningful, transparent engagement and online security. The following rules will be applied for this meeting. This meeting has been called to conduct the business of the City of Boulder. Activities that disrupt, delay, or otherwise interfere with the meetings are prohibited. The time for speaking is limited to 3 minutes. No person shall speak except when recognized by the person presiding, and no person shall speak for longer than the time allotted. Each person shall register to speak at the meeting using their person's real name. Any person believed to be using a name other than those that they are commonly known by will not be permitted to speak. Please use the raise hand function to be able to be recognized for public comment. If you're on your phone, you will need to press *9 to raise your hand and *6 to unmute. No video will be permitted except for city officials, employees, and invited speakers and presenters. All others will participate by voice only. The person presiding at the meeting shall enforce these rules by muting anyone who violates any rules. The Q&A function is enabled. It will be used for individuals to communicate with myself. It should only be used for technical and online platform related questions. If an attendee attempts to use the chat for any other reason, aside from seeking assistance from myself for technical help, the city reserves the right to disable the individual's access to the Q&A. Only the host and individuals designated by myself will be able to share their screens during the meeting. Thank you.
Thanks, Veronica. Number 2 on our agenda for today is the approval of minutes for December of last year. Does anyone have any edits that they would like to propose? Not seeing any. Would anyone like to move to approve the minutes? Turning motions. I'll second. All those in favor? 4 yes votes. Thanks. Next up is public comment. Any members of the public that would like to address the board about a transportation matter will have up to 3 minutes to do so. If you'd like to address the board, please use the raise hand tool within the Zoom platform, and we'll go ahead and call on you.
All right, it looks like Mike Mills was the first to raise his hand. I will ask you to unmute Mike, and I will set the timer once you confirm that you are able to unmute.
Okay.
Perfect. You may speak now.
Hi, I'm just calling because I recently got to see the new bike lane that's been put in North Boulder, and it seems to have a few issues that I thought could be in the future we could do better by coming up with some kind of standardization. For me, primarily, the northbound bike lane didn't feel so welcoming and safe because it's in a door zone where cars are parked. And I know we're working in limited space with a limited budget, but I think there's we're giving free parking spaces there to cars, and it seems like a bike lane could be designed better in the future. I believe but there is a little bit of protection because it's elevated from the road, but then cars will drive over the bike lane to park. And another problem with it being elevated that way seems to be that I think it's not getting plowed when there's snow. So there are issues with that. So I just wanted to encourage, I know you guys are working hard and the city staff is taxed, but was hoping we could come up with better best practices for installing new bike lanes in the future. Thanks.
Thanks, Mike.
Claudia Hansen Thiem, I will ask you to unmute. Please confirm that you're able to do so.
Hi, thank you, Veronica. Can you hear me?
Yes, perfect. You may
Super.
begin.
Good evening, TAB members. Thanks for being here and taking public comment tonight. My name is Claudia Hansen Thiem. I live in the Holiday neighborhood, and my family, that is my spouse and I and our 2 elementary school aged kids, walk, bike, and bus for as many of our trips around Boulder as possible. I'm here tonight to share some observations about the recent work on North Broadway between Violet and Lee Hill. I was concerned about bike accommodations when plans for this corridor were finalized in 2019. And having now had 6 weeks to try out the new design, I am sorry to report it's actually worse than I expected it to be. The new North Broadway bike lane is a narrow strip of pavement on top of a mountable curb. And so much like a driveway curb cut, that curb is designed to let cars come and go freely, in this case to access parallel parking along the east or northbound side of Broadway. When this bike lane works as designed, it has bikes traveling in a door zone several inches above the adjacent traffic lane. So if a driver opens a door or pulls out of a parking spot unexpectedly, you not only have to swerve into traffic, but you have to negotiate a drop-off and a sand or ice-filled gutter along the way. And that's really the best case scenario here. What's actually happening out there is even worse than that, because we regularly have cars that are parked so far from the curb that they effectively block the entire bike lane. Because of the curb and the drop off, you actually have to ride in the car lane if anyone is parked like this. And the fact that there's no snow removal happening on that mountable curb, because how do you do that, right? How do you plow snow on a narrow strip of pavement that doubles as parking? There's snow there, and snow also seems to push the parked cars even further away from the actual curb. So the result is that that bike lane has been completely impassable for weeks after our recent snowstorms. I've used the new bike lane enough to document this. I have a lot of photos that I'd be happy to share with you all, but for daily travel, I absolutely avoid it. And it's a non-starter for my kids. We do have a back way on 13th Street, but that is about to be closed for library construction. And after that, it's my guess we're going to be riding on the sidewalk on Broadway. I honestly find it embarrassing that we're building bike infrastructure like this in Boulder, Colorado in the year 2023. I think this was a total lost opportunity to shape travel patterns for an entire generation. And on top of that, we did it next to a neighborhood, Holiday, that we constantly hold up as a model of walkability and sustainability here in Boulder. So I'd really like to hear from city staff if there's any way we can fix this. At best, I don't think it's going to be used by most cyclists, and at worst, it's going to get people, those are our neighbors, these are my neighbors, injured or killed. Thanks for listening.
Thanks so much, Claudia. Stephen Haydel, I will ask you to unmute and confirm that you're able to speak.
Is Stephen?
Yes, perfect.
Okay. I just double what Claudia said. The North Broadway either needs to be a on-street parking lot or a bike lane. I did a month-long bike tour in the Netherlands, and there was some bike lanes that was a raised bike lane next to a sort of an arterial road, but no arterial road had a bike lane with parking crossing it. So I think it's a choice that probably can come down to city council, saying we're going to either prioritize Vision Zero bike travel or prioritize car parking. And one other shout out, for transportation department, I noticed a few downtown roads where they actually plowed to the center turn lane, which is great. Got the snow away from the parked cars. I think they did it at Pearl, maybe Walnut, in the area. They hadn't done that in a few years. So that makes it, they got actually the snow out of the bike lanes. On 17th Street, between Canyon and Arapahoe, they used the bike lane as snow storage. And I think today it finally melted from the storm 3 weeks ago. Yeah, it's one of those where I put in the Inquire Boulder ticket and got a response saying, yeah, the snowplow drivers are just following the regulations and Sorry, bike lane's unusable for 3 weeks. This is 17th heading to the high school, but the roads that we actually did do the plowing away from the curb back to the center, great. Let's do more of that. Thank you.
All right, Alex, it looks like that is the end of the participants with their hands up. Or, sorry, we just had 2 more people raise their hands. I apologize. Lynn Siegel, I will ask you to unmute if you could confirm.
First, understand that you will not be receiving emails from me anymore. I know I send you a lot. I copy between all the boards I follow, which are planning and RAB and it's very multidisciplinary, but Sarah Huntley has censured me. Basically, she is editing all of my emails before they go out to anyone. So I just wanted to let you know that, because I can't email you and even complain about that. I don't agree to it, but it is not something I am in control of. So I wanted to let you know that. I really appreciated Claudia's remarks and the one before her, that the kind of issues that are coming up are parking, like always, parking versus bikers. And yet we're digging ourselves a bigger hole with 22nd and Pearl. And I don't know if you have an ex officio from TAB onto planning board, but you need to if you don't. I get mixed up a lot because Mark McIntyre, and I thought, where's Mark McIntyre tonight? But of course he's on planning board. He was on TAB, but that, for example, what's going on there is a very dense development of 45 units. And they're talking for hours, about parking and parking in the neighborhood and whatever. There are 300 square feet per unit. This is like a mini New York City skyscraper. I mean, if Boulder wants to be skyscrapers, then that's what they can be. And then you can have no cars and you can have a life like that. But guess what? People use cars, and like North Boulder's the perfect example. It should, in my opinion, it should never have been developed like that, like Gun Barrel, a flagpole annexation essentially, where there's all this development, and now there's problems in the corridor up there for bikers. And is this any surprise? They can only make it so wide. These things are expensive. This developer would not say what parking costs. As it turns out, parking is not included in the rent of $1,700 to $2,600, which is 80 to 120% of AMI. And it's not included. And the best, and I can't find out, so I go to Cajun. The best I can find out is that it would be $897 a month for parking. So until you or somebody demands this on them before they get really far in their concept plans and think they're going to have a design, and those costs all go on to us, back on us. Yet
Thanks.
all that impact, that parking and that driving impact from all those bodies is a lot. And it's the same thing's happening at Papilio's. It started out at 63, now it's got 165 units. This is
Thanks,
just
Lynn.
the way we want to go. Yeah.
Thanks, Lynn. Last person would be Rosie Vivian. Could you confirm you are able to speak?
Hi there, can you hear me?
Yes, perfect.
Hi, yeah, I just wanted to echo and say that I agree with what Claudia and Mike Mills and others have said about the safety of that bike lane. I just got a new e-bike in the summer. I'm very excited. I'm learning all the bike paths one by one, trying to go north on Broadway. And that area is pretty scary. I saw people talking about it when it first got built, and then I was up there for an event in a car actually in the winter and almost drove into the right turn lane with my car. Like, it's so poorly marked. I think I'd for sure be riding on the sidewalk up there, unless this is fixed. Thanks very much.
All right, Alex, I think that was the last participant with their hand raised up. Thank you.
Thanks, Veronica. And thanks to members of the public who came out, Mike, Claudia, Stephen, Lynn, Rosie. I know a lot of the board members share your concerns about North Broadway. And we've added it to our agenda tonight as a matter from the board. And so I know we and staff are going to have stuff to say about it a little bit later in the evening if you want to stick around and join us later. Our next agenda topic, item 4, is the Millennium Property Connections Plan. That's 1345/28. And I'm not sure who's presenting this.
Yeah.
Shannon?
Hi, nice to meet everyone. I'm Shannon Muller with the City of Boulder Planning Department, and I'll be presenting this item for you tonight. I'll just try to share my screen here. Okay. Okay, so this item tonight that the board will be reviewing and providing recommendations on 2 key issues for a proposed redevelopment at 1345 28th Street. This property is just under 16 acres and is located west of 28th, south of Arapahoe, and close to the University of Colorado main campus across Folsom. Boulder Creek runs through the southern portion of the site, and the site's located in the Boulder Valley Regional Center. I'll give a very quick overview of the project before handing it off to the applicant, just touching on a quick summary, the review process that we're in, and the 2 key issues for the board to discuss tonight. So here you can see the existing site in the top image and the proposed site plan down below. The site currently contains the Millennium Harvest House Hotel, which has been approved for demolition, and the site is proposed to be redeveloped as 3 4-story buildings that would house 303 apartments geared toward the city's university student population. The proposal would include improvements to the existing Boulder Creek multi-use path and to the open space surrounding the creek. It would include development of Olson Drive as a new right-of-way connection along the north end of the property, and would include 2 new multi-use path connections running north-south through the site. The proposal also includes a transportation demand management plan to promote alternate modes of transportation. There's information in the staff memo on the transportation system surrounding the site. Generally, the site's well connected with access to existing on-site and nearby connections, including bike paths and transit. In terms of the review process that the proposal's in, the proposal went through a concept plan review back in 2021, and at that time the City Council referred it to TAB for general feedback on the alternative transportation approach as part of the site review process. So the project is now in site review process, and so tonight the applicant has submitted a request for feedback on 2 items from the board. Eventually the proposal will go to planning board for a decision on the redevelopment. The first key issue for the board tonight is the BVRC Transportation Connections Plan. This proposal includes a request to amend the plan, so it would provide 2 rather than 3 of the planned multi-use path connections running north-south through the site. Staff found that the proposal is generally consistent with the BVRC Connections Plan and supports the proposed amendment that would still provide the planned multi-use paths in close proximity, as well as many other pedestrian connections throughout the site. So this request to amend the BVRC Transportation Connections Plan does require a recommendation by TAB and eventually a decision by the planning board. And the second item for tonight is that the City Council had requested that TAB provide feedback on the proposed alternative transportation approach. The applicant has prepared a draft TDM plan that was attached to the packet, and it's going through the site review process, and the applicant has requested the board's feedback on this item. Let's see, so that concludes the staff presentation, and the applicant, I believe, also has a presentation, so I'd like to turn it over to them so they can get into a little more detail with you.
Hi there. Good evening. My name is Danica Powell, and we're pulling up our presentation tonight. Happy to be here tonight. This is my second time with a site review project in front of TAB, and we appreciate the opportunity to bring these big projects that often entail large transportation and multimodal improvements to this board. So we do look forward to your feedback, and this is a newer process for me. So we hope to give you a brief presentation and then answer any questions that you may have. I am joined by several folks on our consultant team tonight. We have representatives from Landmark Properties. I think I saw Ellen Rogers, and I know Andrew Costas will be joining us, and possibly Rob Turk from the development team. From Shears Adkins Rockmore, the architect and designer, Amy McCann is here, and she'll be presenting as well. From JVA, our civil engineer, we have Cody Gratney, and from LSC, our transportation engineer, we have Chris McGranahan. So at this point, we have been in entitlements for several years. We've gone through the concept review process, and that point we were referred to TAB to bring forward these two main questions to you tonight. And we have been working through our site review with the city of Boulder. And so we are currently on our 4th submittal in our site review. So this is a great time to come to you as we're really honing in on the design and finalizing our site review process. And so on this slide, we have the two requests that Shannon mentioned that we would like feedback from you tonight. One is the combination of two multi-use paths from the project. There's 3 that are shown on the site, and Amy will go through those in technical detail. We're proposing to remove one of the 3 north-south connections and consolidate them into 2, which we and staff feel is better aligned with the future development on the site, as well as the existing and future improvements in the area. And we also would like feedback on our transportation demand management plan as it relates to our proposed alternative transportation strategies for the project. And now I'll pass it off to Amy to go through the site and the technical information.
Thanks, Danica. So the site is located with close proximity to CU Boulder's main campus, and it's also centrally located within the city. So there's easy access to CU's East Campus, the 29th Street Mall, University Hill, downtown, and the Boulder Creek Path. It's really optimally located for student housing. The site is settled between 28th Street and Folsom, with neighborhood retail north of the site, the Safeway Shopping Center at Arapahoe. The Boulder Creek Path traverses the site, and its multi-use path. And there's a multi-use path that runs north-south along 28th. You can also make note in this existing aerial of the cottages to the south of the creek. This animated slide looks at the site's connections. So the current connections include the creek path, a multi-use path along 28th Street, and a connection through the Safeway retail up to Arapahoe. The connections shown in the BVRC, which was adopted in 2002, respond to the existing condition of the Millennium Hotel, and the intent establishes the strong north-south connection to access the creek path. The proposed project consolidates the multi-use path to directly align with the existing connection through the Safeway retail and down to the creek path. The multi-use creek path is pulled away from the creek to provide more fluid and safe intersection at the existing bridge. The proposed design offers connections and access to multimodal and alternative transportations for both local and regional connections. There's frequent bus routes along Folsom and 28th, and then also adjacent bus stops nearby. There's bike facilities on site that provide both short-term and long-term bike facilities. We have short-term bike parking that's located near the building entries, and we also have long-term bike shelters that are located within some of the courtyards, and then also additional bike parking interior to the building. And you can see the various resident entries located adjacent to the pedestrian walkways and the multi-use paths. And I'll hand it back to Danica to dig more into the TDM.
Great. And so our TDM, and I think you have a full copy of it in your packet. So these are the highlights. So we have proposed a $75 per year alternative transportation fund for residents that do not bring a vehicle. So in addition to charging for parking, we'll also be paying if people don't bring a car. The fund can be used to pay for bike or car share membership, TNC membership, or vouchers, Uber or Lyft, or other alternative transportation as they become available in the area. The project has unbundled residential parking managed through separate leases and fees and lease language regarding parking. So restrictions, if you don't buy a parking spot, the lease will say you're not allowed to bring a car. We're also trying to mitigate impacts to the neighborhood. Eco passes for employees and any residents who don't already receive an eco pass as a student. CU students do get eco passes with their tuition. So we would be providing those both to employees of the student housing as well as employees of the cottages that are businesses south of the creek, which include Simba, a small daycare, and the Eldora racing team. And we are meeting or we are exceeding our required minimum short and long-term bike parking on site by quite a bit. And we're providing those at many locations throughout the site. We're also providing a bike share program for residents with trailer and basket options and approximately 10 bikes, and then marketing material evaluation tools to increase the awareness and effectiveness, as well as lots of educational opportunities and surveys and such to encourage people and students to think about different ways to get around town versus a single occupant vehicle. And so that's the end of our short presentation. We are welcome any questions.
Thank you, Shannon, Danica, and Amy. Does anyone on tab have any clarifying questions?
I have a question, which maybe for staff, city staff. I am actually curious about the new road on the north side of the development. And I understood that part of it would be built, but part of it wouldn't because it goes over the property line. I was just wondering if you could clarify that, like what that means to have part of it built, like what will it be with the redevelopment of this space?
Yeah, I can try to answer that, and if anyone on the applicant team wants to share as well. But yeah, generally the plan connection there, it would straddle the property line. So as part of this development review process, we can require the redevelopment of this property to build their half of it with this redevelopment. And if the shopping center to the north eventually redevelops, that would be built out with that as well. I don't know if Cody, if you wanted to speak to that at all.
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Cody Gretney from JVA. We're the civil engineer on the project. And so, Rebecca, I think what your question is how does it function as only having half of the road built, perhaps? Yeah, so what we did is we are planning on the final section of the road to be 2 lanes of traffic plus on-street parking. And what we're doing in the interim is we're actually using that on-street parking as our second lane. So it will be 20 feet wide to provide access for both directions of traffic, so that's accommodating the final build out. And then when that future condition happens to the north, then that would be expanded, and the south half of the road that's being built today would be converted to on-street parking.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, that makes sense. I guess my follow-up question then is if this, my concern is whether this road when it's eventually built out, mean, do we know that that design will also be safe for bikes? If it's, I mean, if it's going to be like a fairly congested road with parking on both sides, that's kind of actually a greater concern to me than the pathways being changed, is like how that road functions ultimately.
Can you further clarify? I'm just curious, like, where your concern lies?
Oh, I mainly, and again, maybe this is a question for staff, is just the building out this is a new road for cars to cut, you know, through this area. And I'm wondering if, as it's planned, is it going to be a good road for people to bike on? Or is it going to be relatively high stress given the conditions that are expected on that road, since it won't have dedicated bike infrastructure? I understand it'll have like a sidewalk, a wide sidewalk, but if it won't have any dedicated bike infrastructure, I'm concerned we're building another road that won't actually be safe for people to ride bikes, even though it connects to all of these bike paths.
Yeah, I'll let Shannon or transportation team take that one.
Yeah, my understanding is that the Olson Drive is planned to be a local connection, so it's not intended to be like a heavy traffic type of road with the street section that's planned through there. So it's intended to fulfill the planned connection that's shown on the BVRC as kind of creating those through block connections to kind of break down these large super blocks and create more smaller roads to increase, opportunities for folks to take a smaller, road rather than having to be out on the arterials all the time.
Yeah, and the grid connectivity makes sense. I'm just concerned that it'll end up, because it's next to a bunch of residential and shopping and university, and it has a lot of, it's a fabulous location for new housing. But my concern is that it's just going to end up being quite a busy road, and we're building a new road that won't be safe for bikes, and we'll have to go back and make it safer later. So I don't know.
Can I, Shannon, it's really hard to hear you too. I don't know if it's just me, but your voice or your audio is in and out. This road, I think it's a pretty limited road because it's only a right in, right out. It's really a service drive, honestly, for Safeway. And it's just taking that, I'm sure you've been back there. It's a pretty terrible existing condition right now. So it's creating a small road connection where to really provide, it's honestly probably more service delivery than anything. And that's what it will be for. The multi-use path that runs along Boulder Creek will be really the east-west connection for bikes through that area. So the access is very limited, I guess, is my point. I don't see there being a ton of traffic. You can't really left turn into it to get across to Folsom. So it's not really a cut through road.
Oh, you can't, from Folsom, you can't turn into it.
You can turn in, but you can only go right on 28th. And if you were on 28th, you can't go left into Olson. It's a right in, it's a limited right in, right out on 28th. So it's going to be pretty, I imagine, a very localized use of the road.
Okay. Yeah, Trini, go ahead.
So I just wanted to kind of add on that to the fact that the existing bike path, when it crosses the parking lot, there's an entry to the parking lot where Safeway and Flower Child and all of those businesses are. I think that as it is, it's kind of iffy, but due to the fact that we're increasing bike traffic and pedestrian traffic, perhaps there's an opportunity there as you are thinking this through to increase safety in that intersection. Do you guys visualize where I'm talking about? It's right before the actual intersection. It's where the entrance to there's a lot of traffic coming in and out, car traffic crossing.
Are you talking about the entrance to Safeway?
Yeah, and it's crossing the bike path.
Yeah, that's off of our property.
Yeah, but maybe it's something that you guys can work together with the city as the increase of bikes, bikes is hopefully, hopefully there'll be a huge increase in bike riding. And so I don't know.
Well, and I think our hope is, and I just want to, I think we're trying to get feedback on the multi-use path
Mhm.
elimination. So I think that middle path is where the bikes will go as they go through the site and connect the existing multi-use path as well, probably to avoid those curb cuts that you're talking about.
So will there not be a multi-use path on the west side of 28th Street along the site?
There's one on 28th Street, one in the middle of the site, and one on the west end of the site. Yes, there's 3.
Okay, so the existing one will remain.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, great. Thank you.
And I'll just,
There were 3 new ones. There were 3, maybe, Amanda, can you go back to that graphic showing the 3, and then we're just proposing to consolidate it into 2. So you can see there's actually 4, right? Or 5.
Yeah, and maybe try the animation again.
Yeah, might help. It's confusing. So this is what's there today. These 4 are proposed in the connections plan. And so we're proposing to
Combine those two
combine those
into one.
2 into 1 in the middle to go through our building. And we've really activated the building to create this multimodal corridor through the site. I think the reason I think those 2 were on either side is because the old Millennium building, it would have gone around the old Millennium buildings, and our new buildings are in a different location. So we're aligning it with the existing conditions and our current building layout.
Thanks for the clarification.
Yeah, you can see on the dotted line, the 2 that we're just proposing to, I guess, combine them and eliminate 1, if is probably the request.
Alex, I had something, but was Becky done? Becky, did you finish? I feel like you might have been still talking.
oh, thanks. Yeah, I think my questions were answered. I think my feedback is probably, outside. The path change I'm fine with. It's really that I'm concerned about. I'm concerned about this future road turning into another 4, like 2 lanes for cars, 2 lanes for parking, getting busy. Now it's not nice for biking, like that we kind of are baking that in. And when it's 2 lanes with this project, yeah, not a big deal. But when it becomes bigger with the north side, then so I don't think that's necessarily, though, something that this project needs to address. I think that's more a concern of mine for how the street is built out in the future. Thanks, Ryan.
Alex, is this questions and feedback, or are we just doing questions on this round? Is that both?
We can start doing both.
Okay, so I'll do questions and then feedback. Oh, you're right. So I am really excited about this this project. I think this is just, others have said this, but it's a really important network location for our bikeway. For the north-south corridor, this is one of the few low stress north-south corridors we have as far as connecting Elmer's 2 Mile to 26th and winding through the McGuckins complex. I'm a daily user of this corridor if it's not icy out with 2 small kids in the morning during rush hour, and I know the connection through the Millennium really well, and so I'm excited about the idea of just kind of a more streamlined, just a more streamlined path there. And then I think, wow, so this will add 303 units with 942 bedrooms of permanent housing. And with the transportation van management plan. So I forgot who said this, but I would expect to suddenly see a lot more bikes in this area, and certainly a lot more pedestrians and people that aren't just coming in to the hotel with a rental car. And so I'm just thinking about when I come through the complex from the north, go through this little core. So I think it's north of the property line, but it's through the Flower Child restaurant. There's a little path, and I sort of feel like it feels like maybe it's okay to do this but it's just me. But it's kind of going right by. There's people sitting outdoors, and it's I don't know if that's a private or public right of way, and I'm sorry if I missed that, but I'd be curious to hear the whoever's best to just comment on the thinking on that connection that will, if you take that new consolidated path north, you're right in this little restaurant section, then you go through the parking lot north and then up to McGuckin's. Does that, I guess, I'm not sure what my question is, but have you given that thought, the sort of, I guess, the volume of bikes going through that, and you feel good about current design, or I guess current dialogue with the, I guess, the neighbors to the north there?
So I think, let me repeat what I think your question is how does the alignment work as it leaves our site and goes north through the Safeway and Flower Child parking lot?
Exactly, the middle one, the middle one, yeah.
Yeah, that's out of our scope. So what we're trying to do is focus on our property and create a real multimodal path with the 12 feet, 10 feet of concrete, 2 feet on either side, clearance, and connecting it to Boulder Creek Path, which we did, again, not what we're here for feedback tonight, but we've actually moved that path off Boulder Creek to separate bikes and peds, similar to what you see at the like near the library and the Civic Center. So we think on our site, we're improving the multimodal infrastructure. So it's very clear what it is, and it's separated from the pedestrian infrastructure. However, north of our site, that's outside of our scope and ability to make changes. So I think when they redevelop, they would be expected to follow a similar,
Okay.
dedicated multimodal path that doesn't cross parking lots like it does today.
Thank you. Then could I ask maybe staff at the very least, that path when you go north, is that public right away or is that private? And I'm sorry if I missed this in the materials. Like, should we assume that path that we're building a system into is protected for the public use?
Yeah, I'd have to look through the documents on that site to double check for you. I don't have that information right in front of me.
Okay. If the answer is no, I guess that I'm not sure where to go from there, but this is such an important north-south corridor with our current system. And I would expect a lot more traffic going through there if all this comes to fruition like is being designed. Again, exciting. Then I guess I had something on the TDM, unless I should stop there. Natalie, did you want to go ahead?
Oh, no, go ahead, Ryan. I just wanted to remind folks that council referred this to tab to really focus on the question of the multi-use paths. And so just try to keep and the TDM. So try to keep your comments to that.
Okay. Am I off? Am I on?
No,
Okay.
You're doing good.
Okay. Okay. Then TDM. So I guess maybe just to conclude, I know we're just doing advisory here. I think that's what we're doing. So my input would be to please work with this, I guess, the city to kind of think through what larger volumes of bicycle and pedestrian traffic might do, pushing up between the Flower Child and the Safeway, which may or may not be public right away. And I'd hate to see that get shut down. But I know right now, if I'm going through there, I mean, I have to again, part of me is like, oh, maybe I should get off the bike. And there's this big plastic flower you have to go around, and there's people with that are eating tables. So I just would want to really to be careful what we're pushing there. With at least with the engagement of the people that own the property. Okay, on TDM, I guess I have two questions. So I see there's a list of measures for TDM. One is like $75 a year. So I guess my first question is, can we double or triple it? Is that a starting point? I would just think that the more we can offer on the fee, I forgot what the language around the fee was, but a $75 fee, or sorry, not fee, but reward. Sorry, I need to find this. What was the language here? Here it is. Okay, $75 per year alternative transportation fund for residents that do not bring a vehicle. Can we double that? Can we triple that? How hard is that to make that look really sweet and juicy for the residents? So maybe you have to think about that, but I'd love to see that be as enticing as possible. Actually, let me just stop there. Is there any, I don't know, any reaction to that?
I am looking in the TDM and I don't know, Chris, is it $75 for everyone who doesn't have a car? Is that correct?
It's $75. This is Chris McGranahan with LSC. Thanks, Danica. The TDM plan assumes that if a resident does not bring a car to the site and purchase the parking space, they would be eligible for this fund. So anybody who doesn't bring a vehicle would be eligible for the fund. So theoretically, that some of the residents will be paying for parking and some of the residents could be eligible for this fund.
Let me ask it this way then. What's the 75 come from? That's just the price of what is that number from?
Well, we just proposed it. We've been proposing this on several travel demand management plans lately in the downtown core area where we think we need a little bit more than just providing bus passes. And so this alternative transportation subsidy fund seems to be a nice addition because it kind of helps the people who, don't necessarily want to take the bus or can't take the bus, but don't have a car.
Yeah. I got the concept. My question is, where does the number 75 come from? Is that based on any sort of empirical understanding of what will change behavior, or is it just like?
I believe I was involved with a couple other projects in the last few years in Boulder, and I think we had proposed $50 or $75 and it was approved. So we figured we would propose that same amount.
Okay, so it's not really based on a number that we feel like we could empirically say will probably change people's decision. No, I don't mean to be a gotcha, but I'm just trying to understand what the number comes from. But it sounds like this.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it was something we proposed on one of the prior projects in the last year or two, and it was a similar type of a project. I think it might have been, even have been the hub project.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So as far as feedback goes, I guess now I'm wondering, did anybody ever ask the question, will this empirically drive behavior? And I'd love to see some thinking in this, like what in fact would make a difference? 300 residents, 900 bedrooms. I mean, there's a lot on the table here as far as like, could we make this not be full of cars and instead be very bike and active transit oriented? So if there's any scope to just sort of like, I guess, think that through a little bit, like what is the latest science analysis? Maybe there's some surveying you could do and say like, hey, what would it take you to not have to have a car here? Maybe it's 150. I realize that would raise another question, who's going to pay for it and so on, but I would expect to see a modern TDM design to be empirically based in some understanding of behavior change. That's my second.
I'm sorry, I just want to add one more. And so this is where we're dipping out of what you're asked to look at, but we also are asking for a big parking reduction. So there will be, I think it's almost 60% parking reduction on site. So that in itself will reduce the volume of cars. So we're then complementing it with charging for parking and then providing many options for the people that don't have a car there. So we're assuming that there won't be as many cars as you would see in a normal housing project because it's a student housing project next to campus.
Great, thanks. And am I answering the right question? Am I answering a question that's been asked? I think this is part of the second one, right? Alternative transportation approach, or am I out of scope?
No, we're asking for feedback on the TDM. Yes.
Okay, great. That's what I thought. Okay. And then final thing, I think this is just input on the bike parking and on the theme of being generous to the bicyclists. I'm just, I forgot where the language was. It was a little general about, where did it go here? Bike parking, providing bike parking, basically, meeting or exceeding required minimum short and long-term bike parking requirements on site. I would just encourage you to think about having, there's going to be a lot more e-bikes probably than there was even a couple years ago in a development like this, and a lot more large format cargo bikes, but only if people who own them feel like they're going to be able to put them somewhere where they're safe and it's convenient, they can store them. So would hope that the storage would be secure and I guess spacious enough to be able to accommodate. Ideally, there'd be electric charging in there, and I'm getting into the weeds a little bit, but at least some plugs to do like just a 110, just nothing fancy, just like what you plug anything into in the house. or I guess it's sort of, this is getting way into fine tuning, but if people decide not to do that, can they bring the bike in the building somehow? Is that not too hard? Like, a heavier bike, maybe a 50-pound at least e-bike. So I know that's like really detail level, but just the thinking when we talk about bike design, parking design, just imagining like people leaving the car, not getting a car, but instead having it like a pretty heavy and a pretty large e-bike and having lots of those that they're valuable. Thanks a lot. Really, this is really exciting.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ryan. I guess I'll go next. To answer the first question about the connections, I think this is very supportable with the multi-use path on 28th Street remaining. We have plans to look at and upgrade Folsom bike lanes and then 2 additional connections in between there. That's a lot of connections in a pretty small space. And this modification to the creek path also looks good. As far as TDM goes, I saw that it's at least $75 a month for vehicle parking spaces. I think that's something that's great to see in a location like this. And there's also the desire to include some bike share. Do you anticipate that being a private fleet special to this development, or do you think you'll likely utilize whatever the city has as far as a shared micromobility provider like B-Cycle?
I don't know if we know the answer to that. I think our preference would be B-Cycle because is a system of bicycles. And I'm not sure if we've talked to them yet, but I believe our proposal is in addition to any B-Cycle locations providing like an internal fleet that can be checked out from the property management at the location. Ellen or anyone from Landmark, did you have any additional comments on that?
No, I think that's right, Danica.
Okay.
Thanks. Yeah, this is a really exciting opportunity to have 1,000 college students located near campus and in the center of a bunch of retail and other destinations. I think it's, in a case like this, alternative transportation will be driving. Here, the default will likely be walking and biking and transit, especially with all of the eco passes and B-Cycle access that students are given. So I think this is a great opportunity to improve housing and mobility for students.
Thank you.
Any other questions or feedback from Tab?
Yeah, I just have one more comment, and frankly, it's really more just hopefully not too far outside scope, but kind of general commentary for council, for city council, which is that, it's kind of frustrating to be trying to tweak TDM plans when we require developments to have so much parking to begin with. It's kind of, these things are working in opposition to each other. So if we didn't require so much parking, that would be one of the best things we could do to encourage alternative modes of transportation. So I hope that in the future, we're moving in that direction instead of kind of trying to do this odd balancing act of asking people to build parking, which incentivizes driving, and then asking them to do things to disincentivize driving, even though it doesn't really make a lot of sense to me. So that's my feedback for council. But otherwise, I appreciate the work on this and excited for this project.
I guess my only last bit of feedback, which kind of goes back to what I was saying before, has to do with the fact that, we are going to see an increased number. I mean, that's the goal, right, of cyclists and pedestrians, and we just have to think ahead. And I know that this is outside of the scope. I'm perfectly fine with the paths that you guys are suggesting, by the way. But yeah, keep that in mind, because we want everybody to be safe ultimately, right? And we want to encourage people to be out there. And I think ultimately, if people don't feel safe, they won't be using all these wonderful facilities. And that goes for the bikes as well. What Ryan was saying is super important. I'm not going to leave my bike if I don't feel it's going to be safe outside. So thank you.
Thanks, Jenny. And thanks for the team presenting this. I hope we were able to provide you some of the answers you were looking for and have some direction for when you go to council.
Yeah, thank you. We really appreciate your feedback. And I think, some of the stuff, while it's outside of this project, is useful feedback for other projects and other planning projects that we may be involved in as well. So we really appreciate that and look forward to next time. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks. Have a good night.
Too.
Next up is agenda item 5. We'll welcome Chris Haglund to provide a briefing on the curbside management program.
Yes. Yeah, I was just going to add that Valerie was going to do a little intro for this item.
Thanks, Chris. Valerie Watson, Transportation Planning Manager. We're here tonight to provide an update on our progress in developing a comprehensive set of curbside management policies and practices for the City of Boulder. And since we last updated you in July, the team has completed the flexible loading zone pilots and assembled the components of what will make up the final deliverable for this effort, the Curbside Management Implementation Guidebook. This guidebook will serve as internal policy, and it will outline for city staff the procedures for making proactive and reactive changes to the curb. So tonight, we're looking for TAB's feedback on the components of the guidebook, which our team will present in detail shortly. Ultimately, when we return to TAB this summer, we will be asking you to advise the city manager to use the guidebook to manage curbside uses in the public right-of-way. And this is because procedurally, under the Boulder Revised Code, the authority to designate traffic operations and parking, including curbside uses, is granted to the city manager and then delegated to the city traffic engineer in our department. So tonight, we're just checking in on our progress in developing the guidebook and seeking your feedback at this stage. And we're really excited to share this body of work. The team has done a fantastic job of synthesizing a ton of input from internal stakeholders, external partners, and the community, and landed on a policy framework that prioritizes people and balances the competing needs of curbside space in a range of contexts. And this is all in service of our Transportation Master Plan, Vision Zero, and climate goals. So with that, I'll hand it back over to Chris Hagelin and Carly Seif from the project team consultant, Baron Pierce.
All right. Thank you, Valerie, and good evening, TAB. Chris Hagelin, Principal Planner on the Transportation Planning team. We are here tonight to provide an update on our curbside management efforts. Give a little background on the project to begin with. So, in curbside management, staff is working on developing a set of policies and practices to manage the allocation of curbside uses, with the curb essentially being that side of the road or sidewalk that is nearest to the curb. We need to manage the curb because the curb is a key transition point between travel modes. It connects you to your bus, your Lyft ride, your bike, your vehicle. It's a large public resource with a growing list of competing demands, and implementing the best curbside management practices can contribute to meeting several different city goals. For example, curbside management can be used to contribute to improving safety by providing safe, dedicated transportation network companies like Uber and Lyft, pickup and drop-off zones. It can help with reducing travel delay and related emissions caused by double parking and those impacts on traffic. It can be used to increase multimodal access through, for example, providing on-street micromobility parking. We are also working on developing a number of different standard operating procedures to streamline the city's government process for how we proactively and reactively manage the curb. And finally, we're contributing to economic vitality by meeting the demands of commerce and how it's really changed over the last few years, especially with COVID. For example, having the 15-minute free parking so people can run in and get things that they have purchased. This is part of the overall AMPS work, AMPS being Access Management and Parking Strategies. AMPS is a whole set of different work efforts that work together and then are also meshed in with the larger plans such as the Boulder Valley Comprehensive Plan or the Transportation Management Plan. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to Carly, who will be starting with going over some of our existing conditions and engagement results.
Great, thanks, Chris. So we performed a comprehensive existing conditions analysis, which consisted of both quantitative and qualitative data. So we worked with the vendor Cord in order to inventory all of the curb uses that exist today in the 3 managed districts. So we looked at what is that curb use. We also looked at utilization for parking during peak times to understand the blocks that have significant on-street parking, how well utilized are they? We also supplemented that quantitative data with qualitative observations to pick up on trends that Chris mentioned, like double parking or illegally parked vehicles. Then we did a thorough review of the Boulder Revised Code in order to understand what are current policies and regulations around the curb today, which provided a good snapshot in time for us to make recommendations to update certain ordinances or add ordinances where there aren't any related to the curb. And then we looked at and we talked to a number of different city departments to understand how do they respond to requests to make changes to the curb from businesses or property owners. What is that process currently, and what works well and what needs improvement? So the snapshot from the Cord data shows how the curb is used today. So you can see the light blue is on-street parking. A significant amount, majority of the curb use in the 3 managed districts is dedicated to parking. After that, activated uses such as parklets or bike corrals is next. And then of course, bus stops and loading make up a smaller portion of the curb. So we supplemented this data by hearing from the community. How do you experience the curb? How would you like to use the curb but aren't able to due to maybe a lack of education or because of the regulations? So we reached a broad cross section of the community through online and in-person engagement. So we attended the farmers market. We tabled at Boulder Junction at Pearl Street Mall and went to where the community was to understand how do they currently use the curb and how would they like to use the curb. And we used an online survey to reach people who weren't able to attend those events. And of course, information on the website, as well as Spanish Facebook posts to reach the monolingual Spanish community. We also had a stakeholder group called Access Allies that has been a guide throughout the process to understand kind of the goals of curbside management as it relates to goals from the TMP and sustainability goals. And then had focused conversations with groups like transportation network companies, delivery vehicles, to understand from their perspective how the curb has its challenges, how they use the curb in other communities. So to get those peer examples and to kind of fill in the gaps of the quantitative data that we collected. So this is just one snapshot from what we heard in outreach. This was a response to the online survey combined with the in-person feedback on what kind of curb uses would you like to see more of. You can see that the top few uses all relate to activation, higher turnover of spaces. So number 1 is more bike and scooter parking tied to micromobility goals for the city. And then the second one is short-term curbside pickup. So this is in line and was a big catalyst for our pilot of the flexible loading zones that we'll talk in a little bit shortly. And then safer crossings as well. So a lot about making the curb used better for people. So with that, that set a really important foundation for us to make these recommendations. So setting the stage is the curb menu. What is on the curb today and what are we recommending for consideration for curb uses in the future? So in the white on the left, you can see all of the existing curb uses that you're familiar with. And then we have 3 new proposed uses. So one is a flexible loading zone that I'll talk in more detail in our pilot project slide. The next one is a public seating parklet. So this is a little bit different than the private dining parklet that you're used to. This one is not associated with a restaurant or any business, but it provides an opportunity for vegetation, for a permeable surface, and a place to sit. And then the last one is car share parking, which exists in off-street locations. And then this effort is making consideration and recommendation to consider car share on street just to increase its visibility. So after we kind of developed the curb menu, we created a typology. So we categorized every block in the city of Boulder into one of 5 different categories. This is based off of street classification and land use. So combining these 2 factors, we came up with different types, which then provided a framework for how the curb should be prioritized in these different types. We also categorized alleys in 2 different types. So I won't walk through each one, but just to give an example, commercial centers exist on the higher density streets where we want to see a higher turnover of the curb. We see higher demand for uses of the curb by people, such as Uber, Lyft pickup and drop off, these public seating parklets. Versus on the other side of the spectrum, neighborhood avenues are streets with single family homes, lower density residential, where vehicle storage is going to be prioritized. So I'll walk through on the next slide. This is the manifestation of that typology. So when we mapped out the street class and the land use, you can see how it came out in the map. And this provided an important framework to understand how the different curb uses or the different types interact with each other. And we'll want to understand pressures that exist on one block, what that means for the neighboring blocks. So not looking at each block in isolation, but each managed district or each neighborhood as a whole. So when we combine the typology with the curb menu, we came up with this prioritization framework. So we categorize each of the curb types into access for people, access for commerce, activation placemaking, and vehicle storage. And then based off of the types, we prioritized and created a hierarchy for these different categories of the curb. So in the example I used before in commercial center, priority is access for people, uses like bicycle parking, passenger loading zones, versus in the neighborhood avenue, we see a higher priority for vehicle storage. And so we wanted to provide a guide, a framework. So not a prescriptive, each block should look a certain way, but rather this is an example of ratios of different curb uses on different blocks, as well as how long should each curb use be? What curb uses should be prioritized at the ends of blocks versus the center of blocks? And this also showed how the different curb types will interact with each other. So this is one example of a typical area where we see commercial centers adjacent to residential areas. This is one snapshot. So we really wanted to understand when we prioritized activation for people, as well as access for commerce on these commercial center blocks, what are the implications to the neighboring neighborhood avenues? So you can see some examples on the activated alley as well as this commercial center. We have a lot of spaces dedicated to parklets, to goods loading at the ends of blocks. The ratios are more towards activation and access for people rather than the blue palette of vehicle storage. So we're not providing specific goals as to the ratio of each of the curb uses, as you saw in that pie chart in existing conditions, but rather want to understand how we're going to see different changes in different curb uses over time as we implement this guidebook. So we want to see, in line with community feedback, in line with the goals from the Transportation Master Plan, as well as the sustainability goals for the city, a greater use of curbs for access for people. We also want to see more spaces for commerce as we see technology, travel preferences, creating an increase of delivery, of takeout, Uber, Lyft, TNCs. We want these high turnover spaces that really provide a productive use of the curb. Activation placemaking, a place for people to stay and create this sense of place, especially in our managed districts. And then we're seeing a decrease in vehicle storage. The trade-offs of increasing access for people, commerce, and placemaking is prioritizing garages and off-street parking for vehicle storage in managed districts. Utilization efforts showed that there's parking availability in these off-street spaces. So really wanting to use the curb as an opportunity to build a sense of place. So more on the flexible loading zone that I mentioned. So based off of the feedback from the public that we heard, as well as in our focus groups, and then a peer review we did, flexible loading zones appeared as the top priority to test out a new curb use to see how it performed with the potential for a longer term implementation. So we tested out flexible loading zones that you might have seen in University Hill as well as downtown. Here's an example of the signage. So it allows 10 minutes for any curb use. This could be Uber, Lyft pickup drop off, Grubhub pickup drop off, private vehicle pickup drop off. So short-term use for you to go run in and pick up your takeout dinner. So a lot of these travel preferences and just interaction with businesses that we saw an increase during COVID and a sustained increase even after kind of in the 2021, 2022 years. So the goal was to increase safety, to increase efficiency and productivity of the curb and better match supply with the demand that we're seeing for the curb. So we're able to work with Uber and Lyft, and on the back end, provide geofences. So when you request a ride, you're directed specifically to these spaces, and the drivers on the other end are also directed to these designated flexible loading zones. So we're currently in the process of evaluating the pilots. We have a few takeaways that we'll get to on the next slide, but we're looking at both quantitative and qualitative data to understand how we're seeing changes and trends in the performance measures that are important to us and the goals of the curbside management plan, and seeing if the flexible loading zone pilot is moving us towards these goals. So on the next slide, just some preliminary findings. So far, this has been a really successful pilot. So we've seen that potentially expanding that 10-minute time to a little bit longer would better align with the needs of these users of the curb. But we are seeing that there's a really great kind of complement between demand for the curb by TNCs and demand for the curb by delivery vehicles, such as the UPS pictured here, in that they complement each other and we're able to have a better productive use of the curb rather than having a commercial loading space separate from a passenger loading space. Combining them is a great way to share those demands. So these are a lot of different recommendations for the curb. What are going to be the triggers that cause us to make these changes? So there's 4 main catalysts: development, capital projects, proactive changes, and reactive changes. So I'll walk through each of these separately. So on the development side, we're making recommendations that kind of integrate into the development application process, that the developer make recommendations as to how demand for the curb will change with their new development or with the redevelopment. And this proposal will include the curbside changes in association with their project. So this process will be integrated either into design and construction standards, municipal code, and or the transportation demand management plan as well. The second catalyst for change is a capital project. So a major corridor project that is already studying feasibility of changing that corridor. It's already looking at moving curb and gutter. There's large investment both in the study, the plan, the design, and the implementation and construction of changes to that corridor. So there are a lot of cost efficiencies of including curbside management as a part of the scope for corridor studies. Proactive changes. So by observing these 4 different performance measures, we can understand what curb uses rise to the top where there's a need to evaluate making changes to the curb. So the first is the high number of crashes that are caused or potentially caused by curb behaviors. So looking at curbs where there's more than 3 crashes over 3 years, those will rise to the top. Similarly, looking at community member complaints, citations, or if there's an over or underutilization of the curb, these are all signs to us that there's a mismatch of supply demand and a need to assess making changes to curb designations in certain places. And then lastly, reactive changes. So this is something that's taking place today where businesses put in requests to the city to make a change to the curb space outside of their business. Currently, city process isn't necessarily consistent in responding to these requests, and the process isn't transparent. So we created flow charts for each curb use to provide guidance for city staff to have a transparent and standardized process that's quantitative, but also incorporates an element of subjectivity. So you can see the example here is for an accessible parking space. If a business were to request that, they would follow this flow chart in order to kind of inform their response to that business. So implementation of all of this. So we have cut sheets that provide design guidance for each of the curb uses. So this is an example for flexible loading zones. It includes things like the design considerations. How long should that curb space be? Does there need to be concrete buffer or reflective devices such as with an outdoor dining parklet? We really want to understand the cost. What are the budget implications, both for implementation, so that the cost of constructing and making changes to the curb, but also cost of operation and maintenance and staff time that would be involved in that process. And then each curb use is potentially priced and enforced. So I want to include all those considerations in one really easy to use fact sheet. And then how will we prioritize implementation across the city? So proactively, we're going to first look at those commercial corridors that we mentioned in the typology, where there's commercial land uses and on collectors and higher volume, higher speed streets. And then citywide, we're going to look specifically at a few different curb uses. Those are flexible loading zones, passenger loading zones, and good loading zones. And then, as I just mentioned, in the proactive catalyst for change, those blocks that rise to the top with the performance measures of crashes, complaints, compliance, and utilization. And then reactively, as city staff has been currently, continuing to respond to those requests from businesses and property owners for changes adjacent to their property. And then concurrent with capital projects, that will be kind of as those capital projects arise, and then same with development as development proposals continue to be processed. And then lastly, an evaluation plan. So this is important to guide the city in what data to collect, what's the methodology for collecting that data in a consistent way, and how can you continue to monitor the success of this plan. So similar to the evaluation of pilot projects, as changes to the curbs are made, it will be important to monitor and evaluate to ensure that they're reducing number of crashes, that kind of utilization is aligned with goals, and that we're seeing an increase of activation, and the goals of this effort are kind of manifested in recommendations from this plan. Communication to the public will be important as changes to the curb are made, being clear, making sure that material and that signage and information is really intuitive to users. And there's been important takeaways in our observations and our community outreach to really make sure that changes are communicated clearly and that uses of the curb are intuitive. And then lastly, making sure that this plan isn't static. The curb is changing very quickly, especially as it relates to technology. So we've documented the kind of best practice of the curb today, as well as ways to ensure that this can be a living and dynamic document as kind of technology and use of the curb continues to evolve, and looking to our peer communities to incorporate best practices.
Thank you, Carly. Just coming back for the next step. So after following this meeting, we're looking at going to all of our commissions, both the downtown, the University Hill, and BJAD commissions in March. We'll be communicating input received from those commissions and TAB in a city council information packet on April 20th. We'll go back based on that input and make refinements to our plan, which, ultimately the deliverable is the curbside management implementation guidebook. That will be a document to help guide staff work in the future. We will return to TAB on June 12th. This is where we will be asking TAB to recommend to the city manager to adopt the implementation guidebook to guide staff's work on curbside management. We'll communicate the results of that to city council, perhaps in a June 15th packet. So that's rather quick turnaround, but we're going to see what we can do with that. And then the rest of this year, we'll be looking at making any of the changes to ordinances that are necessary based on the changes we're making with this implementation guidebook. So city council will have opportunities to weigh into those ordinance modifications or changes or new ordinances related to implementing our curbside management practices. And then tonight, what we're doing is looking for feedback from TAB on the things that are presented and provided to you in your memo on the typical areas, the priority of curbside uses and locations, and the procedures we've drafted for making proactive and reactive changes to the curbside uses. And with that, we conclude our presentation.
Thanks, Chris. Carly, that was very thorough. I'm not sure I have any questions. Anyone from TAB have any feedback or clarifying questions?
I have a question, kind of broad, but how does this interact with the on-street parking pricing sort of mechanisms? Like, how do they have any sort of, do they work together? Like, yeah, I'm just curious what that interaction is.
Yes, certainly. So Samantha Bromberg, who is with Community Vitality, is also a member of our project management team. She is the one that has been bringing performance-based pricing through City Council. So we are completely meshed in our our work on both the performance-based pricing and the curbside management. I'll give one example of a way in which you do this. The opportunities to change curbside uses from the dominant vehicle parking, vehicle storage to other uses is really dependent on how we manage supply and demand of parking. We know that there are spaces in our structured parking. So as part of that performance-based pricing project, we are changing the pricing levels, right? So on-street parking is more expensive, structured parking is cheaper, hoping to convert some of that on-street parking into structured parking. That gives us the opportunity to make changes onto on-street curbs by using pricing to change that demand and better utilize our structured parking. So that's just one example.
Yeah, thanks. That's great. It's really exciting to hear those things kind of come together.
Yep.
I just want to commend you guys for this amazing work, and thank you for a resource that's going to be so useful moving forward. It's incredible.
Quite welcome.
Alex, I have two, but Tila, do you have? Sorry, I don't want to put you on the spot, but you haven't talked yet today, and you've been on some of the close to the curb stuff. Do you want to go before me? Don't feel
No,
pressured.
I've only just got on about 5 minutes ago, so I just saw only a little bit here. So go ahead.
Okay. Thank you, Carly, Chris. Great presentation. I'm glad to see you getting so much distilled down here. I know there've been a lot of different stakeholders with different things to say, and it's an effective presentation. And I like, Carly, some of the slicing and dicing you did with the different components and modules. I think that's an effective way to show what you're doing. I have two points of feedback that are maybe more of the constructive variety. The first one is maybe just sort of messaging, but I would hope and expect to see just suggest the future presentations of this. If you can start up towards the top and discuss system goals that this advances. So I'm thinking about TMP goals like mode shift and VMT reduction. I know, Carly, you have a chart that, I shouldn't say it's just Carly, but you presented it. Of some of the things you heard people say they wanted the curbs to do. I guess I'm thinking there's a more important question for executives and elected body of the city, which is what are our system goals for transportation? How does this work? Or as a guidebook, how will the work that the users of this guidebook do advance mode shift and VMT reduction and Vision Zero? You don't need to respond now, but I think this would be even stronger if in the front matter for whatever materials this ends up at, that you discuss that in sort of considerations for users of the guide materials, how they can affect those goals. I had one more point of feedback, but I'm happy to pause if anybody wants to say anything. You don't have to or ask anything. Okay.
Good advice. Thank you.
Yeah, that's
okay.
Helpful.
Great.
Appreciate it.
Great, thank you. And then my second one, and this is more both substantive and technical. And we the horse may have left the barn or whatever metaphor on this, but I'm just now looking at it, the presentation and thinking. So we have a kind of a premise that, or there is a premise that there will be more delivery vehicles and more shared vehicles, and I think I would agree. There's a probably a trend towards that, and in fact we could even see more shared vehicles being consistent with more people living car light if those are more small transit vehicles, some scenarios. But I think that if I'm reading it right, there seems to be kind of an assumption that those vehicles are motor vehicles, and but you could have delivery vehicles that are micromobility, e-bikes, 2 or 3 wheelers or whatnot. And I wonder if there's a way to pilot at some point or put language in here to say there's an interest in exploring some kind of a fee-based system or a standard in which you say, fine, right now these are probably all motor vehicles serving this cause or this purpose, but we'd like to see 10% of them become ultralight vehicles. So e-bikes, for example, and through funding the curb, through the other users to perhaps provide incentives. So I probably said something like this in one of our working group meetings a while ago, but I just wanted to elevate it as it might answer one of your questions. Anyway, that's it. Thanks a lot for the great work.
All right. Thank you, Ryan. One thing I'll just add real quick, one of the things in our stakeholder meetings, with UPS, for example, they certainly have a desire to shift towards electric vehicles and even smaller electric vehicles. So, one of the things we've been looking at is, would there be a need for short-term electric charging, for those types of electric vehicles? So we are that is in our frame of mind and working with, in the future, companies to help make that happen. And then also, if you look at, the potential to future monetize the curb and to charge vehicles to use it, that could also serve as an incentive for those types of delivery companies to use other types of vehicles as well. So just want to add those 2 points. Thank you.
Tila?
Thanks, Alex. I just wanted to clarify based on Becky's question, how does this deal with other paid parking uses? I think, Becky, you might have been also referring to neighborhood, what are we calling those now? The NPP is now a different acronym. But this
the residential access management program.
Thank you. But my understanding is that this effort is more because it's sort of DRCOG related. It's more based on those core business corridors, and it's really not thinking about pricing parking in those residential areas in the NPPs. I can't think of another thing that it's not touching, but those are two different kinds of paid parking approaches, and this isn't really talking about that. Is that fair, Chris?
Well, RAMP certainly is an existing program right now that is managed by Community Vitality, but we are looking at how we integrate all of this. Just one example of a residential treatment that may come out of this type of project would be, if you think about some of our older neighborhoods where people lack a garage or a driveway, but may have an electric vehicle, how could we provide like residential charging curbside in neighborhoods like that? So that's just an example of some of the, different ways, but certainly,
Okay.
Always pricing is a mechanism that we can use in helping to manage demand.
So you're saying there's nothing really in this effort that would necessarily preclude, say, a flexible loading zone, on a block in a neighborhood that gets deliveries. Like we might be able to apply these to broader places than where we're just piloting them.
Yes.
Excellent.
There are residential streets in our typologies, but for the most part, where demand is the highest and where there's the greatest need to manage demand are in those, denser commercial areas.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Anything else? Awesome. Thanks, Chris and Carly.
All right. Thank you for the
Thank you,
feedback. We'll be back to you in June after meeting with our commissions.
Awesome. With that, we'll move on to agenda item 6, matters, first from staff.
Thank you. So our first item under matters, we have a lengthy agenda under matters this evening, but Councilmember Spear, I believe, is kicking us off with an update from Dr. Cog. Let's see, there she is.
Thank you. And I'm going to share my screen and hope it works as well as it did when I tested it earlier. All right, can everybody see that okay?
Looks good.
Wonderful. Thank you. And thank you so much for giving me some time tonight to share these updates from DRCOG. Before I get started, I just want to thank Jean Sanson for putting these slides together, and to Jean and Natalie and all of you on TAB for getting me up to speed on regional transportation issues over the past year. I really appreciate it. As you all know, but I'll state for any members of the public on the meeting, DRCOG is the Denver Regional Council of Governments. It's a regional organization whose directors are council members and county commissioners from across the Denver metro area. The board of directors works with DRCOG staff to establish guidelines, set policy, and allocate funding for transportation and personal mobility, regional growth and development, and aging and disability resources. So you all may remember that in 2021, Senate Bill 21260 established some greenhouse gas reduction targets for state and regional transportation plans. What this meant for the Denver metro region is that we were required to develop a plan to reduce surface transportation greenhouse gas emissions through our DRCOG transportation planning process. So last year, DRCOG spent a lot of time working on changes to our region's transportation plan, the 2050 Metro Vision Regional Transportation Plan. I'll just call it the 2050 RTP. The changes not only included updates to the 2050 RTP, they also committed our region to further action through a mitigation action plan. And the DRCOG board adopted the 2050 RTP and the mitigation action plan back in September of this last year. The changes that occurred in the 2050 RTP led to some pretty major shifts in how we plan transportation across the region. We're planning to meet almost 90% of our greenhouse gas reduction targets by changing how we spend transportation dollars. So rather than spending billions of dollars on highway expansions, we'll be investing instead in building the multimodal infrastructure that we need for more transit, biking, and walking, which I expect many of you are very excited to hear. So in the coming decades, we'll start seeing changes like removing several highway widening projects, expediting some of our bus rapid transit corridors, like our Colorado 119 bus rapid transit project, adding $900 million for multimodal projects, and adding investments in pedestrian and bicycle safety, transit, complete streets, and so on. So these changes, along with some changed assumptions about how many people in our region are going to telework now that we're more used to working remotely, weren't quite enough to get us to our goals. So we'll accomplish the remaining 11% of our reductions through voluntary, for now, changes to our land use and parking management strategies. Let me first show you what some of these strategies are, and then I'll say a little bit more about what voluntary for now means. So DRCOG identified several mitigation strategies that are going to make a big difference in our region's greenhouse gas emissions: increasing residential density, increasing job density, more mixed-use transit-oriented development, reducing or eliminating minimum parking requirements, and adopting local complete street standards. You can see the anticipated annual reductions under each icon in the slide here. As many of you know, the latest Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change report lists increasing density as critical for helping mitigate the climate crisis. You can read more in the latest report about how increasing housing and job density is a key transition that will help the planet avoid more than 1.5 degrees of global warming. So DRCOG is going to be providing technical assistance to communities that are ready to work on these mitigation strategies in the coming years. As usual, Boulder is out ahead on climate, and our new East Boulder Subcommunity Plan actually meets a lot of these requirements already. And I'll say more about that in just a minute. But I want to get back to what I meant by voluntary for now. The region has some check-in points on how we're doing on our greenhouse gas emissions reduction goals. The first one is going to come up in 4 years. If we're not on target, additional mitigation strategies will likely come into effect, which will begin to tie transportation funding to this mitigation action plan. So what that means is that to be competitive for transportation funding, we would have to show we're making progress on these changes. And as you likely know, in this current funding cycle, we've had over $47 million come in through DRCOG for transportation projects. So it really does matter for our city that we stay competitive for this funding. Transportation staff and I are all pretty doubtful that the 2050 RTP and the mitigation action plan are going to be sufficient to get us to our goals by that first checkpoint in 4 years. So it's kind of 3 years now since we adopted it. So these more stringent regulations on funding are likely to kick in at that point. But like I said, the good news is that we're already coming out ahead. You may remember that our East Boulder sub-community plan addressed this issue directly. We're anticipating a reduction in greenhouse gas emissions due to increasing the number of people who make trips closer to home and work. And by creating a well-connected, walkable, and bike-friendly transportation system, paired with 15-minute neighborhoods, we can not only improve mobility and quality of life, we can meaningfully move the needle on our broader climate goals. Our East Boulder sub-community plan addresses 3 of the 8 mitigation action plan strategies that DRCOG created. So keeping up with the SB 21-260 greenhouse gas emissions reductions really just means doing more of what we're already doing. That's the end of this little update on the 2050 RTP and the mitigation action plan. Does anybody have any questions about that part?
Nicole, can I ask? Thank you for doing this. This is really interesting. I guess I have some thoughts on sort of like implications, but I'm wondering from your side, like, who needs to hear this the most and do what with it? Like what, or how can TAB at least be helpful in whatever needs to happen next?
Yeah, I think knowing for transportation folks, for planning folks, and then just for elected officials to be aware that this is likely to come, I think that's an important component there. I do think, we're already moving in good directions to be ready for when some of these things do kick into effect, and maybe we're wrong. Maybe they won't kick into effect and we'll get there on our own. But I think it's really just some awareness and thinking about, how are the decisions we're making fitting into this? How are they going to help us be competitive for what's coming in a few years when these changes likely go into effect? And I think our transportation staff really, this is front and center, I think, in their minds as well. So just monitoring that there. But in my mind, it's everybody who's related to thinking about our housing, planning, and transportation systems. It's good to be aware of this. Any other questions about this one? There's a whole long document about it. So if you're curious about more and really want to dive into the details, you can go read those. Okay, then I'll move on to the update that maybe is not quite as uplifting, but that seems important for folks to know about. So as you all know, we had quite a few RTD services cuts during the pandemic, and they've been trying to get back as fast as they can, but workforce challenges and budget shortages have really impacted the restoration of services. So we had an update at DRCOG a couple months ago, and RTD is expecting significantly reduced services through 2027. Right now, there's a lot of uncertainty around when some of the services will come back. We've been trying to push on them a little bit to get more of that information, but we are just not able to get more details on that right now. So what they're working toward is getting us back to 80% of pre-COVID service levels for the routes that are serving Boulder. One example of these service cuts is at Boulder Junction. The transit center was closed and 5 routes suspended, and only the FF2 and AB2 are expected to return in the next 5 years. Right now, there are some plans to figure out a path forward, given that there's some uncertainty about when those services are going to be restored. And these are just a few of the things that are being created to try to understand this a little bit more. A sub-regional service council is set up to advise RTD on service changes. and our city staff will be participating in that. There's going to be a partnership program implementing pilot programs and cost share programs like the HOP that's funded by CU and Boulder and RTD. And the DRCOG Sub-Regional Forum is going to be working on starting a countywide strategic transportation plan to think about what we're moving toward. And the forum is made up of a county commissioner and county staff and city council members and transportation staff from cities in Boulder County, basically those DRCOG Sub-Regional Forum folks. So just a quick update, passing on some of this information from RTD and some of the ways that we're starting to think about this as a region. What are the implications and how can we address some of these needs that we still have in our community? And that's all. Does anybody have any questions about this one?
Thanks, Nicole. Any RTD questions? Jean?
Hi, thank you. And thank you, Councilmember Spear, for that great update. I just want to share that we have heard from RTD, like this is hot off the press, that they will be restoring the FF2 to Denver, which is the express route to Denver, and the FF5, which provides service along 36 between Boulder and Anschutz campus. And so that's expected to happen in May. So I just wanted to add a little bit of good news there, that RTD is really working to incrementally bring back service. And those were two of our higher priority routes to be restored. Thank you.
Great, those are much better than the alternatives if you're in certain places.
Yeah, thank you. It's great to know.
Nicole, is that the end of your presentation?
Yep, that's it.
Thank you, as always, for joining us and certainly for presenting.
Yeah, thanks so much for letting me share this with you.
All right, Alex, do you want me to just keep us moving?
Sure.
Okay, and Jean is here to provide a regional transportation update, so I will hand it back over to her.
Great, thank you. And thank you, Councilmember Spear, for that update. And I think this presentation is just going to follow along on some of the regional planning information that was just shared by Councilmember Spear and get a little bit more focused on how that impacts and benefits Boulder specifically in terms of projects that are moving forward. So let me first share my screen. Give me just a minute, please. Oops. Okay, are you all seeing this in presentation mode? Great, okay. So let me just start by saying that, just kind of stepping back for a minute, right? So the Boulder Valley Comprehensive Plan and our Transportation Master Plan provide the policy framework by which city staff and city council representatives, as well as TAB, work in collaboration with our neighbors and our agency partners to plan, to pursue funding, and to implement regional priority projects. And as you all know, our current policies support greater mode choice for Boulder residents, students, visitors, and non-resident employees, and encourage high-quality multimodal travel options through transit, bicycling, and ride sharing, much of what's already been discussed this evening. And you'll see this reflected in the map on this slide, which illustrates a network of multimodal regional corridors identified in the 2014 Northwest Area Mobility Study. This evening, I'm going to highlight 3 of these priority NAMS corridors, starting with RTD's Northwest Rail project, followed by updates on the East Arapahoe or Colorado 7 project and the Diagonal Colorado 119 multimodal corridor improvement project. So let's start with the Northwest Rail Peak Service Study. The Northwest Rail Peak Service Study is intended to advance the proposed commuter rail service from Denver Union Station to Boulder and on to Longmont. As a reminder, many years ago, almost 20 years ago, back in 2004, voters approved the Northwest Rail as part of RTD's Fast Tracks Transit Expansion Program. The first segment, known as the B Line, was actually constructed several years ago and operates between Denver Union Station and Westminster today. However, since 2004, RTD has encountered considerable challenges completing Northwest Rail, mainly due to escalated project costs. So the study that they're undertaking now is to evaluate extending the commuter rail service approximately another 35 miles from the Westminster station to Boulder and Longmont using the freight railroad tracks owned by the Burlington Northern Santa Fe, or BNSF, through what's called an initial peak service approach. And this approach consists of 3 weekday morning trips from Longmont to Denver and 3 weekday evening trips from Denver to Longmont. And while this study is focused on peak service, it will identify opportunities to implement full day service in the future as ridership increases. The study goals are fairly straightforward, and they're intended to establish a common set of facts that will help RTD and local decision makers determine if advancing the peak period commuter rail service is a viable investment. So as you can see here, the study is identifying the requirements, the costs, the operational needs to upgrade the tracks and build 6 new rail stations in Westminster, Broomfield, Louisville, Boulder, and Longmont. And RTD is looking at opportunities to implement Northwest Rail by partnering with other stakeholders, such as the Front Range Passenger Rail District. So this was a state agency that was established last year with the task of developing and ultimately completing a passenger rail system between Pueblo and Fort Collins. So the idea being that the Northwest Rail alignment may be a viable option for part of that passenger rail service. The 24-month study being led by RTD will be accomplished within a series of what they call milestone decision points to encourage public participation. Throughout each milestone, the study team is meeting with local representatives like our staff for input on things like station design plans. So we've been working with the RTD team to look at the Boulder Junction area and how the rail system would integrate into existing and planned infrastructure. These initial recommendations are now being shared with the public. 2 in-person meetings have already been held, one in Boulder and one in Westminster in late January, early February. And ultimately, the study will conclude with a report summarizing the infrastructure costs as well as the operations and maintenance requirements associated with providing peak service for what they're calling the preferred configuration. So that would include the recommended track alignment with freight sidings, high-level station concepts, and commuter rail maintenance facility plans, which would be located in Longmont. And when we say freight sidings, what we're referring to is the fact that this commuter rail service would have to share tracks with freight rail that currently operates on the Burlington Northern Santa Fe right-of-way. So what would happen is that those freight trains would be required to move over, essentially, to park on siding, which can be pretty long, while the passenger trains or commuter rail passes. So the City of Boulder, along with our partners such as Boulder Transportation Connections and Commuting Solutions, have been promoting community engagement opportunities, and I'd encourage you all to do so as well by participating in the self-guided online meeting. There's a link here. It has the same information as the in-person open house in both English and Spanish, and it's open for about another week, closing on February 21st. And perhaps before I move on to updates on the 2 other regional corridors, I could stop here and ask if you all have any questions about the Northwest Rail study. Okay, hearing none, I am going to move on. Okay, next I'm going to share some updates on the Colorado 7 or East Arapahoe corridor. So turning our attention to our next priority NAMS corridor, Colorado 7, what you'll see here is that over the last several years, many planning and feasibility studies, including the East Arapahoe Transportation Plan, have established the Colorado 7 corridor's future multimodal vision for travel between Brighton and Boulder. This vision for the 29-mile corridor includes bus rapid transit improvements supported by multimodal roadway, bicycle, and pedestrian infrastructure, and transit supportive land development at planned station areas. As you can see from this map, it's a pretty long segment. It spans 3 counties and multiple local jurisdictions between Boulder on the west and Brighton on the east. So to advance implementation of this vision, the Colorado 7 Coalition, which includes the city of Boulder in coordination with CDOT, has successfully secured nearly $50 million to advance preliminary and environmental engineering design projects throughout the corridor. So you can see from this legend, these design projects are illustrated in the map with their associated TIP funding. So, it also illustrates, as you can see here on the lower right-hand side of the legend, that TIP dollars are being used to begin what's called BRT startup service. In 2026, we will begin operating all-day regional bus service between Brighton and Boulder. So in addition to capital design and implementation, TIP dollars are also being used to provide a startup transit service, which we're pretty excited about. And basically, what I like about this map that was created by the CDOT consulting team is that it underscores how important these TIP funding cycles are to implementing regional transit and bicycle connectivity in our region, all in the service of reducing greenhouse gas emissions and vehicle miles traveled from commuters. I know we've spent a lot of time over this past year talking about TIP cycles, but this is why it's important, because it really does move projects into programs into projects. So honing in on our end of the corridor, about $1.5 million of these funds are allocated for the East Arapahoe preliminary environmental and engineering project between 28th and 63rd Streets. This is an important next step toward implementing the full vision for East Arapahoe, which includes the following elements that you can see on this cross section. So we intend to maintain 2 general purpose lanes in each direction, repurpose the existing curbside general purpose travel lanes to bus rapid transit and right turning vehicles, and pedestrian and bicycle improvements, including an off-street multi-use path and protected bike lanes. CDOT is coordinating closely with the City of Boulder on this 12-month project and has hired HDR as the lead consultant. Internal scoping and data collection has begun, and we expect to begin to look at design cross-sections in the coming weeks to understand how the East Arapahoe vision fits within the existing right-of-way and where design refinements and or right-of-way acquisition may be needed. The project team is anticipating to kick off community engagement in April, and we expect to have 15% design complete by the end of 2023. As I mentioned, project outcomes will include 15% design plans and cost estimates, including cross-sections. And following completion of the preliminary design plans, the City of Boulder will take the lead in advancing the western segment of this project between 28th Street and Foothills Parkway to 30% design drawings, which we expect to begin in 2024. So you can see the progression of phasing the design of these projects as we move from west to east. So that is my update on Colorado 7. Again, let me pause here and ask if there are any questions.
I have a question, Jean. Thanks for this update. I'm curious, so that I understand the different portions are kind of different phases, and I'm curious how, so as the road moves through different jurisdictions, like could the design be quite different between them because of those just different jurisdictions that are, overseeing their section of the road, or is it like expected, for instance, that there'll be consistent implementation of a off-street bike path?
Yeah. Yeah, Becky, that is such a great question. There is absolutely an expectation by CDOT and the coalition that there be consistency between facilities. So there is like an overall sort of umbrella corridor team being managed by CDOT, both Region 1 and Region 4, which this project spans, to ensure that they're developing things like a bikeway treatment design guide, And they'll do the same with other types of infrastructure like transit facilities, et cetera. And they are coordinated so that all of these projects are kind of feeding up into those coalition conversations. And we have regular staff level meetings to ensure that those projects are linking to each other in such a way that as a user, it doesn't matter to you if you've crossed from the city of Boulder into Boulder County. It feels like a consistent facility and service for that matter.
Great, thank you. Yeah, that's a big endeavor. I'm sure.
One bite at a time.
Yeah.
Okay, let me keep moving on then. Last but not least, let's turn our attention to Colorado 119 or the Diagonal Corridor Project. You know, we thought this information was important to share as the Diagonal Highway has one of the highest crash roadways in Boulder County, and improvements to this regional corridor are first and foremost intended to improve safety for all users, particularly our most vulnerable users. I think these are some very sobering statistics, and given the recent fatal crash on Foothills Parkway, which connects directly into 119, is of utmost importance to us as a community and to our county partners. But that's not to say that there aren't other important needs as seen here. A lack of a direct bike connection, unless you'd venture to ride on the shoulder, limited RTD bus service operating in mixed traffic, and forecasted growth in the corridor mean that new solutions to transportation improvements in this corridor are needed. This map illustrates the many projects that are actively being coordinated among corridor partners, including CDOT, RTD, Boulder County, and the city of Longmont. So essentially, in one snapshot, what this map is illustrating are the major improvements that include bus rapid transit and transit enhancements. And you'll see two different routes coming into Boulder, serving both downtown as well as the CU campuses. As well as a route that serves Longmont, both up Main Street and on the western side of Longmont itself. A commuter bikeway, which I know TAB has been very involved in helping to refine the design of, and you'll see in that green legend, many of the underpasses to make travel through the corridor on a bike comfortable and separated from traffic. Intersection optimization, which I'm going to show you a few illustrations of in a minute, first and final mile connectivity, and of course, enhancements within the city of Boulder, such as the 28th Street Improvement Project, which will facilitate expedited transit travel time. So as you can see in these drawings and illustrations, intersection improvements paired with bus queue jump lanes at major intersections along the diagonal are expected to provide exceptional BRT travel savings and trip reliability, cutting travel time nearly in half and forecasted to increase ridership by more than 30%. So as you can see at the top, this is an illustration of the preferred design concept at the intersection of 119 and 52, as well as a typical bikeway underpass on the lower left-hand side, and a typical BRT station design with the station in the median and the buses pulling over, jumping through the queues to avoid those congested choke points at major intersections. There's a lot of information on this schedule slide. I don't expect you to read it all, but what I would like to direct your attention to is the right side of the schedule. So we're currently in the process of final design and plan to move into construction in 2024. And RTD at the same time is planning to phase in improvements to the Bolt service to begin full implementation of bus rapid transit in the coming years. As you can imagine, as we move through final design and complete this last phase of the process before an advertisement goes out for construction, there will be additional opportunities for community engagement, and we'll keep you updated as we know more about this process in the coming spring timeframe. That was a lot of information. Thank you for taking the time to listen. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thanks, Jean. I'd be curious how we prioritize our local commitments to these projects with all of our other local demands. Like, when does that get decided or prioritized?
Can you be a little bit more specific?
Like in a tip cycle, how do we decide whether to prioritize regional projects like this or more local projects that aren't state highway BRT projects? How are we making that value judgment?
Sure. And when you say prioritize, are you talking about the projects that we as the city of Boulder are bringing forward, or are
Our local commitments?
I'm happy to step in here. Yeah, so I think I understand what you're asking, Alex, and I would say it's not super straightforward, right? Like there's a little bit of judgment calls that we're making. So there's two separate calls usually when it comes to TIP when we're looking at applying for grants. There's the regional and then there's the sub-regional. And the projects that Jean talked about today are mostly in the regional bucket. So we're coming together with partner agencies, looking at how we can further these corridors. And so we are a partner on those regional projects, the regional TIP applications. And then separately, there's a sub-regional call, which are the ones that you all are very familiar with because that's what TAB has been intimately involved in this year. And then those are prioritized, as we've done, but we're basically saying that both are our priorities, right? If you look at the TMP, we've said regional travel is a priority, and we've said making our local streets safer is a priority. And so then we're funding both of those priorities, and they're not necessarily being compared against each other when it comes to how we're funding each. We're saying they're both priorities and we're going to fund them as we can. And I think there's certainly opportunities for us to get more specific about that. But historically, it hasn't been, I would say it's a little gray, it's a little vague on that they're both priorities to us. Garrett, I don't know if you have anything to add just from like a CIP budgeting perspective, but certainly chime in there if you do.
Yes, Garrett Slater, and I'm trying to use my new title according to our new structure now. So Civil Engineering Manager for Capital Projects. So everything Natalie said is absolutely spot on. The only thing I would add is that the regional TIP call for projects tends to be more favorable, and that because there tends to be more funding partners that participate. For example, the preliminary and concept design for CO7 that Jean highlighted, there was funding participation from Broomfield, from Adams County, from Thornton, from Brighton, from Lafayette, from us, from CDOT Region 1, from CDOT Region 4, and you put all those local funding partners together. And I think we wind up putting in like $200,000 of local funding for what turns out to be like $1.5 to $1.6 million of actual value realized. And that's just a really great leveraging ratio. And so when we see an opportunity like that, we'll typically be opportunistic and look to take advantage of it on these priority regional corridors.
And I'll also add, I think, and we could probably talk about this for hours, so I won't go on too much, but I think in addition to, leveraging the dollars across the region with our other partners, there's a history, right, around how we invest our dollars regionally and the commitment as far as how we're trying to, given that the number of people that are coming into Boulder on a day-to-day basis, we're a partner to all these jurisdictions around us, and we want to also meet our goals as a community. And so there's a need to invest. And if you go all the way back to the 2014, NAMS study, there's a coalition of regional jurisdictions that are all working towards that goal. And it would be a really big divergence from that partnership and collaboration with all these regional jurisdictions for us not to, go in when all these regional jurisdictions are saying, hey, we want to improve the corridor. And I'm not saying that that's not possible, but it would be a very big political divergence to say we're not going to be a part of those processes and partnering on those projects. So just good, I think, background for you all to have.
Yeah, I wasn't suggesting that. I'd be curious if prioritization has changed at all in recent years, though, with the pandemic, fewer people are commuting or people are commuting less often, the ability to hire transit operators has skyrocketed, as have construction costs. Seems like a lot of the cost benefit has changed with some of these projects in recent years. Have our plans or our priorities been impacted by that at all?
Gina, I don't know if you want to speak to that just as far as.
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I can speak to that. I mean, for one thing, we are seeing the numbers begin to tick back up, right, on our major corridors. What we're doing is we're working with CDOT and our partners to adjust forecasts accordingly, because as you can see, these projects are pretty long-term in nature, right? So like we're still just in the preliminary design phase of Colorado 7, for instance. So, you know, when you compare that to say like improvements to 28th Street, these are improvements that are going to be phased in over a course of, you know, 10, 15, 20 years. And so we do anticipate that there will be a semblance of sort of that pre-COVID travel volume forecast. But what's happening is we're seeing those peaks start to change, right? So they're not, the peak travel time isn't as peaky, it's starting to soften. And so we're starting to look at how designs will accommodate that over time with different usage of the roadways during different times of day, and adjusting travel volumes accordingly as well.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Anything else from TAB? Not seen any. Thanks for that update. Natalie, is there more from staff here?
That's it on the first item. Thanks, Jean. So we have a quick update from Scott Schlecht on our snow and ice response review project. So he's here to just say a few words about that.
Yes, thanks, Natalie. Hello, Scott Schlecht, Transportation Maintenance Manager. And did want to, we were originally scheduled to present our snow and ice response review project today, but we have bumped that to the March 13th meeting instead. So I did want to take a moment to just touch in with everyone and let you know we're coming up on a pretty major milestone in the project later this week. So wanted to inform you all of that. So we began this project in 2022 to assess the current snow and ice program and do an analysis and consider some changes to that program, purpose and goals to better meet city service and community members' expectations. So currently we have documented our existing program, and this spring we will be considering changes to the purpose and goals. One of the inputs to the purpose and goals update is community feedback, and that is the milestone that we're coming up on later this week. We will have a month-long window of engagement open, and that engagement shares the current program, where we plow and why we plow those areas. And we will be seeking community feedback to help shape the possibilities for future updates. Mailers announcing the engagement are being sent out to all residents and property owners within the city limits. And there is a virtual open house available on demand to share the information and obtain the community's feedback. We're planning to attend the March 13th TAB meeting. We will also share that information out with TAB, the URL and link to the community engagement page. And we encourage you to share your individual thoughts in the questionnaire and look forward to the board's input next month. And we are anticipating that the project will be completed late this year to help inform the 2025 budget discussions. And that concludes my update on the snow and ice response review project.
Appreciate that, Scott, and look forward to seeing you back next month.
Thanks, Alex, and thanks, Scott. I'll just say and make a plug for keep an eye out for the story map virtual open house that will be coming out later this week. I got a sneak peek and it's pretty cool. So great. Well, let's see. We have another quick update. This is actually, it will be a request of TAB. So, and I believe Allison is here maybe. She's just not coming up on my screen.
Veronica, could you please promote Allison?
Yes, I will.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me this evening. Hi, Tab. I am Allison Moore-Farrell, Senior Transportation Planner for the City of Boulder. And thank you so much for having me this evening to share about the airport community conversation. And as you saw in your packets, and we shared in previous emails about the background of the airport community conversation. And what I'm coming with you with this evening is to request a TAB liaison for the community working group. And what we're aiming for here is to have a participant on our community working group, which will be about 20 to 30 individuals from a wide range of folks in the Boulder community, both on and off airport stakeholders. And we are aiming for our TAB representative to share our transportation advisory goals and transportation master plan perspective on this project. So I'm happy to answer any questions about the project itself, if you have any additional questions from the packet that was shared with you, and if you have any questions about the liaison position itself.
Thanks, Allison. Appreciated the packet that you sent over. Do any TAB members want to express interest in this position? Oh, Teal has something to say.
Yes, I had a question.
No.
No,
no, don't do it.
So Allison, it's not clear to me sort of what the origin of this project is. You know, it's like exploring alternatives and benefits and costs and downsides, but why is something changing? What's the impetus for this whole project?
So one of the origins of this project is in the latest Boulder Valley Comprehensive Plan update. It was identified that prior to the next Airport Master Plan update, which airport master plans occur in 10 to 20 year increments. And before our next airport master plan update, it was identified in the Boulder Valley Comp Plan to do a study to look at neighborhood serving uses at the airport. And so that was one of the initial reasons for bringing about this community conversation and identifying goals and visions for the Boulder Municipal Airport.
Okay, thank you. That helps a lot.
And I will share, sorry, briefly, I just wanted to add one thing. When we were sending in the packets, there has been a scope expansion for the community working group members from 3 meetings to 5 meetings. So I just wanted to share that prior to anyone committing to being the liaison.
Okay, and will that involvement, so the involvement right now, or from what was in the packet, was from February to June? Are you expecting it will go later in the year than June, or it'll be squished into that same time period?
We are expecting it to go to the remainder of 2023. Okay, thank you. To allow for more meaningful engagement.
Okay, thanks. I guess my one other comment was I thought we didn't really need the huge attachment to our stuff in the packet. It's the contracting agreement and all the nitty gritty. We didn't need to see that.
Have insurance.
Right. So that was a whole bunch of junk that I didn't have to go through, in my opinion.
Great, thanks.
Harmless, at least. Anyone on TAB want to express interest in this?
Alex, can I offer possible interest, although I hope that there's somebody who would be better suited than me, but I would like to see somebody going into this that has at least some, I don't know, interest or perspective. And what I might bring is something that's pretty specific and maybe not the right focus. But when I think about the future of a municipal airport or local airport, I'm really wondering about the future of like future technology, like what small battery electric powered machines are going to do to VTOL for the vertical takeoff and landing stuff and drones, and that there's the potential for an incredible growth of privately owned and operated vehicles that I don't think anybody is talking about right now. We haven't talked about it at TAB, and there's some pretty dystopian futures, I think. There's also some futures that mean this is stuff that's just, we have to work with. So I bring some perspective and experience with this, but like, this is a very narrow slice, like everything. So hopefully somebody on the board has a wider expertise on airports and would put themselves forward. But if we're looking for somebody, and this sounds like a perspective that the board wants, then I'd put myself forward.
Sounds kind of interesting, but I don't think I have any unique perspective either. You might have more with the knowledge of all those vehicles.
And Ryan, one of the reasons one of kind of the expectations of the board members as a liaison is to share the information from the community working group with the board and vice versa. So so you don't have to have airport experience to be on the board. And I'll also share that we also have a planning board liaison on the community working group as well. So again, if there's interest, we'd love to have you. No specific expertise is needed.
All right, Ryan's in the
Alex, I'm sorry. I was going to say, I'm sorry. I feel bashful that I sort of jumped in and made I feel tepid about doing it. I just was sort of wondering if anybody wanted to do it. So whoever's the most enthusiastic should jump in here. So please don't take my talking first, like I'm somehow trying to do this. So Becky or Trini or Tila or Alex, you should do this if you're feeling it.
Thanks, Ryan, for expressing semi-interest. I will confess that I was part of the interview panel for the current director of the airport. Erica Vandenbrand asked me to do it, and I told her no, thank you. And then she came back and said, pretty please. So I did. And I did learn a fair bit more about the airport operations than I had known. And I think that's possibly the benefit of this community working group, is that it will have people who just have one narrow perspective to understand sort of how it's being used and by whom it's being used and the impacts of that. So I do have a little bit of background on it. That being said, if Ryan is semi-interested, that's probably more interested than I am. But Alex, if you had to, or if we had to just sort of, pick a name out of a hat or whatever, I thought you should
make a motion.
I have had some of that.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
I'm jumping and making a motion to nominate you, but I guess we should see if anybody else wants to.
No, but you want
Sorry,
to.
I think there's also some land use component to this, and the connections between Gun Barrel and the rest of Boulder. It's not just airport stuff potentially.
Right.
Becky.
I'm a little wary of committing myself to more meetings, to be honest. Just a little unsure if I can.
Understandable. All right, Tila, Ryan, which one of you wants it?
Tila, I'm sorry, I guess I wasn't following your sort of punchline. Are you saying because you did the previous work that you're well suited, or are you saying because you did the previous work you've done your duty and it's somebody else's turn?
I wasn't really saying either. I just thought it was relevant if we had to actually appoint somebody. And I think if you are semi-interested, that's probably more interested than I am. So I would prefer you do it. I'm happy to be like the alternate or something.
Okay.
All right, Ryan, Prime, and
happy to do it. Yeah.
Okay.
It's going to be fun.
So fun.
Allison and John.
We have a good time. It'll be fun. We'll make the open houses and the meetings fun, Ryan, I promise.
I'm excited about it. I'm sorry. I don't mean to.
It's really, Ryan, if it makes you feel better, I didn't know too much about municipal airports, and I've learned a lot from John in the past few months, and it's pretty interesting.
Great. Looking forward to it. Thanks, everybody.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Allison. Okay, and another CWG request coming right up. So you get to spread the love, Ryan. So I am providing this one tonight. So a couple staff from transportation and also from climate initiatives are working on the streetlight acquisition project. And this is pretty exciting. The acquisition will be occurring, the full separation will be occurring this year. And as we prepare for that, the staff team is forming a community working group to basically solicit feedback and input on how we go about kind of lighting the community and like what temperature of lights that we use, depending on the context that the lights are installed. And so and I should say part of the acquisition, the reason we're acquiring the system is to convert to LED, and that by converting to LED, we're saving money, reducing our greenhouse gas emissions, enhancing the reliability and customer service of the system, and then reducing unwanted night sky impacts. So there's a lot of really good things that will come from this. And so it'll be important that we're kind of getting the community's feedback as we prepare for that transition. So tonight we're asking TAB for a representative for this working group. I don't have as many of the details as far as the commitment goes. I know the work will occur in 2023, the working group work will occur, and I believe it's going to be a few meetings. So you could probably guess around 3-ish meetings. And the one thing I will say is the working group will, whoever, is willing to represent, there will be a commitment to there will need to be at least one night meeting because folks will want to go out and kind of see the impacts at night with the LEDs. So that's just something to keep in mind if that would be a constraint on your schedule. But yeah, with that, I'll leave it to you to discuss.
I have a little experience and interest in lighting stuff.
I'm kind of interested if nobody else.
Yeah, I'm interested.
Natalie, can you clarify? Sorry, just so people
Natalie,
understand this. Oh, no, go ahead. Go
Sorry,
ahead, Jeff.
Jerry. Natalie, when will this work start? Is this something we need to appoint tonight? Or might we know more about the open
So
tab seat next month?
Well, I believe they wanted to have because I did ask that question of, did we need to figure this out tonight? And it seemed like they wanted to be able to get the group convened as soon as like next month. And so I don't believe we want to wait until next month to get a representative. But, if that's what's necessary, then we can certainly do that. Ryan, did you have a question too?
Just to clarify, help maybe for the group, does this include, is this about new network design of lighting overall, or is this just like bulbs in posts that we already have? I'm just thinking about what's sort of the scope.
Yeah, I believe it's more so the bulbs, the posts that we already have, and transitioning those over to LED, and depending on where they're at, what temperature we use.
All right, well, with Tila and Trini both having interests, can we put you both down tentatively, and then we'll see about the open board seat in a month and can adjust from there as needed?
Yeah.
Does that work, Natalie?
That sounds good.
That sounds good to me.
Okay.
Okay. All right. That's great. That's it for matters from staff. Thank you.
Thanks. Under matters from the board, The first thing is a debrief from the 2023 Annual Commuting Solutions Legislative Breakfast, which is commuting solutions in the Northwest Mayors and Commissioners Coalition. Ryan and I attended with some staff and council members to hear about from electeds about what else is going on in the region. Ryan, you have any takeaways from that?
I appreciated that City of Boulder was there and had a table up at the front, right next to the governor, and that Tab had a chance to go. It was I don't have any obvious like here takeaways from it. I don't know if there's any questions folks have. They probably, this point is kind of long ago. I guess I would, yeah, I'm grateful that staff sort of worked to get Tab members represented in a meeting that had limited seating, and I'd love to see more of that. I think it helped immediately understand how we fit into some of the bigger picture. I don't have a lot more substantive to say.
Yeah, I'll appreciate the invite. It was good to hear about some of the higher level coordination. We often get reports from of how Boulder fits into the broader system. It was good to hear a little more comprehensive with an organization that's focused on a broader scale in the city. So hopefully that's back again next year and the board can send a couple, maybe new representatives. Next up is North Broadway. If there's nothing else on the breakfast. I know we've heard tonight 5+ people speak about North Broadway. Council's gotten some inquiries about it. I know one TAP member posed the question, why weren't there protected bike lanes built on North Broadway? Natalie, you want to kick us off with some thoughts?
Yes, I am happy to do that. So, and I have a little bit to say here, so I'm just going to dive into it. So I'll go straight to Becky's question of why we didn't build protected bike lanes. So as I wasn't here for these discussions in 2019, I've spent some time over the last few weeks looking back at past documents and meeting minutes to objectively understand how we got here. Given the constraints of the right-of-way, competing needs, and a constrained budget, there were trade-offs to be had. Ultimately, staff implemented a design that tried to balance the competing desires from community members to retain space for existing and future on-street parking, while maintaining reliable vehicle travel and enhancing safer bike and ped travel. That resulted in what some may see as a less than ideal final design. I can't speak for what occurred then, but what I can say is that as we move forward with projects like this, we will collectively have honest conversations that address the question of trade-offs when we can't have everything, including trade-offs related to a constrained budget. And that won't be left to staff alone to decide. Especially as we prepare to implement the CAN, it's important to remember that council and the community are the decision makers, and we staff are here to implement. Going forward, I can commit to having transparent and candid trade-off conversations with TAB, council, and the community as we continue to work on implementing the CAN and other projects in our community. And with that, I'll hand it back over to the board and happy to answer more detailed questions. Thanks.
Thanks, Natalie. I really appreciate that. And I think that's a plan for success. Try to warn people, don't worry too much about this happening again, because I feel like there are many safeguards in place that will ensure that nothing like this will happen again. And it's really unfortunate with all this criticism coming in, because I know most of the people who are a part of that have since left the city, and the people who are here to hear the complaints are people who may not have been here at the time. I think Teal and I were both on TAB at that point in time, so we were pretty intimately involved in this. And I just view it as a really unfortunate missed opportunity. It really got off on the wrong foot. The project team didn't consider all the options and then found themselves up against a deadline perceived where they had a limited amount of money and had to do the projects to meet a deadline. Just they need to finalize the plans in a few months, and that's when they began the engagement. And then, of course, during the engagement, it was loud and clear that the community wanted protected bike lanes. And first, the project team said we didn't have time to incorporate those into the design to meet the deadline. Then we were told there wasn't the money to do it. It was believed to cost, or is estimated to cost $1 to $2 million incremental to pull that off. But then it just got kind of weird. We were told that they didn't fit. Sometimes they did, sometimes they didn't. They were less environmentally friendly than regular bike lanes. And the biggest head scratcher for me was we were told that they were less socially equitable, which didn't feel like a very honest assessment of the situation. And so I found it really hard to solve a problem with people who aren't acknowledging that there was a problem. We were told that paint is protection on a state highway, and that's what the community wants. And I think perhaps the most frank person through it all was the project manager. And he told us that it wasn't an improvement project, it was just maintenance. It wasn't supposed to be a bike improvement project or transit or pedestrian. And what I found particularly offensive was he said that the ideas that the community brought forward were good, but do them somewhere else. Which, if you're a resident of North Boulder, of the Holiday neighborhood, that's a pretty hurtful stance for the project manager to have. And he continued that if the design didn't match the community's plans could be amended to match his design, which I don't think is how planning is supposed to work. And with him and perhaps others, that's when the idea for this multi-use path that you see on the west side of the street came up. And I think it was, our plans called for a separated facility, and that was the easiest place to sort of haphazardly put one out there. And that wasn't originally brought to the community for their feedback. It wasn't in a staff recommendation. It was brought to like an emergency tab meeting. And a majority of the board members expressed concerns about that multi-use path long-term, the one that's out there now, because it leaves only 10, 12 feet between where cars can be parked in the future on the west side of the street. We've preserved the opportunity to add parking where there's none today, and redevelopment on the west side of the street. It's zoned so that it can mirror the east side of the street and have ground floor retail. And a majority of the board voiced concern that you shouldn't have people walking and biking in both directions, and bike parking and lighting and landscaping all in that confined of a space. And I know I was led to believe that the multi-use path was just temporary. That's a detail that seems to have been lost. After TAB opposed that approach, at the TAB public hearing, staff presented a new preferred alternative, which included a mountable curb in the buffer. All the materials that we received in the title, the description, the graphics, it included the phrase mountable curb, and that led many to believe that the bike lanes were now protected. And the aftermath of this, Community Cycles, who was very engaged in the process, sent a follow-up to their folks saying, thanks to public support, protected bike lanes coming to North Broadway reconstruction project. And I think that's what got people to agree to it and built some amount of support for what's out there right now. However, there are two pretty big oversights. The first was the curb. Every TAB member who stayed on the board in the months following expressed either that it hadn't been accurately communicated to us, or it wasn't in fact a curb. And two, the cost. We didn't build protected bike lanes because we couldn't afford them. We grossly underestimated the actual costs of these curbs. So the cost benefit just wasn't what it was believed to be. What I've brought up concerns about ethics, and this project is where that kicked off. In the aftermath of the project, a lot of the team members tried to distance themselves from the city's official stance. Some saying they told the board things that they knew were untrue, others switching their stance on things. Those who told us that this was a great project that aligned with our plans and what the community want flipped into the camp of it was never supposed to be an improvement project. The improvements are coming later. Same people, very different stories. And I think the pervasive mentality was the one of screw your plans. Here's a multi-use path. We've checked the minimum box. And so unfortunately, with this project, we're years behind schedule, millions over budget. And on day one, the bike lanes fail to meet the need or the expectation that we're planning for any other place around town. And the multi-use path is something that has been flagged as a not very viable long-term option. We had the resources and the support to build protected bike lanes and have them in place today. So it's a huge missed opportunity, even an embarrassment that we have this very unique cross-section that we didn't have to do this. It was a choice to do this. There are plenty of off-ramps to do something better. And we're left with this unfortunate reality of live with this street for the next 40 years or needlessly spend money that we didn't need to fix it, and interrupts people's lives. There's so much such an intrusive project up there for residents, especially for businesses. I can't imagine wanting to kick off another process where we spend millions of dollars to do what we could have and should have done in the first place. And it's just a travesty. I feel bad for all the community members involved. I feel bad for everyone who spoke to us tonight. I feel bad for the people currently at the city who weren't responsible for this. And it's sad thinking about how much labor went into this. People put years of manual labor into something that on day one, people are like, no, thanks. This is not what we need. So just all around a missed opportunity. And I think, as Natalie's suggested, as I've heard from Nuria, I think from the actions of the board in recent years, there are so many things in place that will make sure that nothing like this happens again. Tila, anything to add from the process or?
No, I think I do think that North Broadway and Broadway Rayleigh were two kind of key points where staff started taking TAB much more seriously because both of those projects came to us a little too late to have much meaningful impact on the design. We did have some meaningful input, channeled a lot of what the community had said that they wanted, but in many respects, there was just too much water that had already gone under the bridge. So, but I have seen in recent years staff bringing large projects like this to TAB earlier and seeking more public engagement in more meaningful ways, and taking seriously some of the concerns instead of just, as you say, like checking the box, like we heard you, we're deciding something different. So I have seen an era of willingness to seriously consider and accommodate in a much more earnest way the concerns that TAB raises and that the community at large raises. I do want to point out that also this project was happening at a time, and it's not that we've figured it out, but we as a city and as a community and the transportation staff experts are learning from protected bike lane infrastructure that is still very much evolving all over the US. We're looking at what other cities do. We're trying different things. North Broadway represented an attempt to use vertical rather than horizontal separation, which we hadn't done before. And if we do it again, we're not going to do it like this, I assume. But it was an attempt with limited, right of way and room to put everything that we wanted to try a vertical separation instead of the horizontal separation. Since then, we've learned some lessons about where that works, where that doesn't work, why and where parking protected stuff might be more suitable than where we tested it. So we are still sort of learning, and I think that's sort of, if there is a silver lining, it is that we learned a number of lessons as a community, as a board, and as people working, closely for the city. We're all trying to make life better, And sometimes in seeking new solutions, we don't grab the best one. So I wanted to just at least extend a bit of sympathy for staff trying something new and being brave enough to try something new. And hopefully we've learned what vertical separation might mean and could be better.
Anything else, Becky?
Yeah, thanks for that background. That's helpful. I guess my question is, what happens, after we kind of get to this point where we have something that doesn't meet kind of safety standards. It's not an all ages and ability facility. And I am concerned that it is less safe than it was before because of the slope, and because particularly on the side where you have to as one commenter early on explained, where you have to swerve around, if you have to swerve around a large car that's parked and you go down that slope and it's slick, I'm really concerned about what's going to happen. I feel like that's a worse scenario than like a painted bike lane. And so I'm just wondering, what would be the path, for instance, to make that safer? Is there any potential to just not allow cars to park so we can put something in there to make it a protected bike lane? And what would it take to do that?
Yeah, I appreciate the questions, and definitely just I think we're honestly all trying to problem solve and figure out, how can we make this more ideal. So the team over the last couple of weeks has been talking about just different strategies as far as better enforcement around parking, education, maybe some signage, better striping, just some potentially low cost, kind of low hanging fruit tactics that we can do to make it feel safer. I think, around your question of if we were to go down a path of removing parking, that certainly, I think it would need to be a work plan item. It'd need to be a project that gets prioritized amongst other initiatives in the work plan to begin basically a community engagement process to consider taking out parking along North Broadway. And then, beyond that, any kind of infrastructure improvements, I think it also would just need to be conversation about shifting work plan priorities and budget priorities to accommodate that.
Thanks. Just one follow-up question. It's just if council decided this is an urgent safety issue, we are concerned that we're going to have bad outcomes here, could they sort of make it a faster process, as saying look, we understand the problems and the risks here that we've put the situation, and until we can fix it, people should not be parking to the right of that lane because it's just too much of a hazard. Could council make that happen faster? I am really concerned about bad outcomes that could happen from this.
Yeah, it's a good question. I don't know exactly kind of the administrative versus kind of council authority around parking along Broadway. I'd have to take that question back, but I can certainly do that and get back to you on it.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, I'm thinking of other kind of ways we temporarily, limit parking in an area and saying, we're doing it this time for safety concerns.
Yeah.
Until we can figure it out. Thank you.
Is there a way to address the snow and ice concern that was raised earlier? It seems like.
Yes. Yeah, and I believe, let's see, Valerie's here. Yeah, either Scott or Valerie, I believe, are prepared to speak to that.
Yeah, I can just chime in real quickly that, we can look at working with Community Vitality on parking regulations seasonally to be able to do snow clearance overnight. So that's something that we are looking into with CV at the moment.
Thanks.
I just would like to add something. I'm not sure how many of you are aware that specific road specifically Amante, is a meeting place for cyclists. And the feedback that I have had, starting by my husband, is that they're just terrified to ride on it because it's become a ditch. I mean, there's so many things that need to be immediately fixed in order for what Becky's very, very afraid of, for negative outcomes to come out of this. I mean, it's just, I think, just waiting to happen, and it's echoed by the community. And I don't know what the fastest fix is, but we definitely need to do something in the short term before something really bad happens. I mean, there's a lot of traffic, cyclist traffic there. So it's essential that this is like at the top of everybody's list. And I mean, I don't know, Nicole, is Nicole still here? I don't know if we could visit with city council. I mean, I don't really have the answer as to how we can prioritize this, but ultimately we're all here trying to achieve zero, right? Our goal is to reach zero. And I think that's where we are at if we need to prioritize. Thank you.
Alex, I just had something. So, well, a couple things. So first, some gratitude to the community members, Claudia and others who are sticking with this and showing up after all of this, and not just throwing their hands up and giving up on the process. So yeah, thank you to all of you. Also, thank you to Natalie for being so forthright. I know a lot of the key decisions, as you discussed, happened a while ago, and many of the staff working on this are new, if not most of them. And so what is happening here is kind of doing some forensics. But I really appreciate something you said, and I'm paraphrasing here, but something along the lines of making a commitment to making sure that we have values decisions that are happening in the daylight with community and elected. Again, I'm totally paraphrasing, but that's what I took from it. And I thought that was really important. And I know, I believe that's something you really mean, and that's going to be very helpful for us going forward. And I've really just been impressed over this past 6 months or year with hearing staff listen to feedback and take it forward. And I know there's things in the works that we'll hear about at future meetings where I think we're going to see more of what TAB has and the community has given advice on and is making a difference. So I have a lot of faith that we're headed in the right direction, and I'm grateful for everybody who's working together on this to in the next chapter. And then I just have kind of one thought, which is it seems like there's this tension in that this is a potentially serious safety issue that demands attention now, some kind of a fix, but also the local community is pretty tired from a long construction project. And so it makes me wonder if there's a chance to do some kind of innovation on the way in which we can choose to the pace, I guess, of just getting stuff done. And if you'll allow me to just reference a podcast I heard today, Jeff Speck, who's a planner that was actually referenced in the West Pearl memo as an authoritative figure. He was interviewed on the Strong Towns podcast, and he said something along the lines of nobody should ever do a traffic study ever again. And he makes a case for why. And the point is the modern way to do a lot of this project is just to make it happen and don't wallow too much in the process of it. So perhaps this is a chance, an emergency chance to try some innovation on just doing some quick fixes without maybe doing things the way we've done it before. So thanks for that.
Thanks, Ryan. What you just said really struck a chord. Of course, there were traffic studies here before and after studies, but at one point of that emerged from the discussions around this project in TAB in 2019 was that I did bring up, Trini, the number of cyclists at Amante, in particular. And it was clear, and the then director did state very succinctly that cyclist volumes had no bearing on the design. And I said, yeah, no, I know. That's the problem. So I think that was really interesting what you just said, Ryan. Just I don't know, we have in this city now kind of adopted a public engagement strategy and system for procuring public input. And it's never really quite clear to me when that counts, when it doesn't count, what level it's at. So I'm still, despite all of that, clarity and structure, I still don't really know what it's getting us.
Definitely. All right, I think we've covered this, and I know we can probably expect some complaints, some ideas, and we'll see what's possible moving forward. But we know that we won't fail the community this bad again. Any other matters from the board? Becky, I think you had a couple.
Yeah, I just have a couple, I think should be short things. First, this came from a email we got from the public asking about particularly a 30th Street project, but spurred a bigger question, which was how existing bicycle and pedestrian volume, so it kind of ties into the last conversation, how that is used for determining when to pursue a safety project. Does there need to be a demonstration of a certain amount of people are biking or walking in a certain area before we will implement a new project, for instance, to build a safe crossing? And yeah, so my kind of general question is, how is that kind of information used for decision making, understanding that in many cases, if there isn't that safety enhancement, a lot of people simply aren't going to bike or walk or use some alternative mode if they don't feel safe to begin with. So yeah, I was just hoping for more insight on that.
Thanks, and Devin is here to respond.
Hi, good evening. My name is Devin Joslin. I'm the principal traffic engineer for the city. Becky, I would say that most of that is detailed within our pedestrian crossing treatment installation guidelines. And that document is based on research that shows that really it is important to have pedestrian demand before putting in a pedestrian crossing treatment. And the reason for that is that when there is not demand, motorists can be taken by surprise. They're not expecting pedestrians, and we don't find that the yielding compliance is nearly as good, even with a crossing treatment installed when there's low demand. So in the case of the guidelines, there's specific criteria that calls out a certain number of pedestrians be present within an hour or within a 2-hour period or 3-hour period. And those are the criteria that we use to determine whether to install a crossing treatment. And then from there, the type of crossing treatment is based on the speed of the roadway, the lane geometry of the roadway, as well as the traffic volume on the roadway.
Thanks. I guess one of my questions is how that ties into like equity of access for different modes and for different people, because we know that when conditions are unsafe, like a wide range of the population is not going to, choose to walk or choose to bike, or, depending on how safe they feel. And it tends not to be a very representative segment of the population that is willing to make those choices to walk or bike when it's unsafe. So I guess, how do those factors sort of tie together in determining this kind of, are there other factors that can be used? Like, for instance, it's a 1/4 mile between crossings and that's too far, so like other things like that would inform why you would build a safe crossing and it's in a highly populated area and it's a destination that's really popular. You know, all these other factors I would think would play a role, not just how many people are using it when in its unsafe state.
Yeah, can I just add to what Becky says before you answer, Devin? I'm sorry, but it because it seems like a vicious circle, right? I mean, you're not going to have the quorum that you're looking for to improve the crossing because people intuitively are not going to go because they don't feel safe. So it's like, you know, whereas it doesn't really justify a need. There could be a lot of people that would rather cross there, but they're walking further away because they just don't feel safe. I mean, sorry, that's just my 2 cents.
Yeah, thank you for adding that. You know, it is, I think to Becky's point, that is a consideration within the guidelines, is the distance to adjacent crossings. You know, a quarter mile is quite a way. And I think what we found, I think the distances you're talking about on 30th Street is something like 500 feet. So you're asking people to go in total like 1,000 feet, say out of their way to get to the signal at Arapahoe to cross 30th Street. In relation to the kind of chicken or egg argument and the if you build it, they will come. It's been our experience over the years that is not the case within the city. There have been instances where we have put in crossing treatments and the demand has not been realized for whatever reason. So we do have some past experiences that we have across the city where we've maybe deviated from the guidelines and put in a crossing without the demand, and then the crossing demand has not been realized as expected. So I think that is why we do take a cautious approach and want to study things carefully before putting in a crossing treatment.
Yeah, I mean, I'm hearing you. Maybe it's something I need to learn more about or read more about to understand. I guess I see others examples of it that I have a hard time kind of reconciling. Like we were talking about this site review earlier in the meeting, and there's like a new road for car traffic to go through, but it's not clear like what was the demand factor there, you know, for building new roads. And then I know similar thing in the East Boulder sub-community plans, like we need to build these new roads for cars and they need to be, you know, multiple lanes but there's no like estimate of demand for cars to travel. So it feels like hard to, you see like the sort of what is hard to reconcile is like the demand, biking and walking and rolling of other forms has to prove that it needs something, and like driving does not, is how it ends up feeling. I know I'm oversimplifying, but that's how it ends up feeling, you know, that like, why do we have to prove that people need safety when there clearly isn't a safe, you know, facility somewhere? And maybe it's different for crossings than for on-street safe, like, you know, traveling along the street. I don't know. Tila, you something.
Thank you. So Devin, I'm aware of the pedestrian crossing treatment guidelines. I think that was a work plan item for staff in about 2020, and the pandemic happened, and so that didn't actually get updated. So what we're working with is an 11-year-old document, and it certainly does talk about what you described, that it's based on sort of minimum pedestrian volumes, and also saw lower compliance on lower speed roads. And I've raised this, I think, so I also want to make sure, Becky, this came up for us in a recent email conversation with a member of the public who was asking about crossing 30th Street. And it's at a location near Marine, between Marine and Scott Carpenter Park. And I was more concerned in past months with crossing, people getting diverted from the multi-use path during seasonal spring flooding, because that underpass closes and multi-use path users are directed very far out of their way to cross either at Arapahoe or at Colorado. And so I said we should really be, you know, looking at having this interim treatment. And then I hear Devin's response. It's not the first time we've heard this, but I went back and looked at that, the guidelines, and page 12 to 13, section 2.2.10 Says staff is aware of the fact there are locations where pedestrians regularly cross arterial roadways, and yet the crossing does not serve a multi-use path or a school. So we would be thinking more about the Marine and 30th, Marine, between Scott Carpenter Park and Marine. These locations typically occur on 4-lane roadways, which 30th was, or 6-lane roadways often serve transit stops in the area. In some cases, it may be appropriate to install treatments that facilitate pedestrian or bicycle crossings, but stop short of the signed and marked crossing treatments defined in Table 1, which is what you were relying on, saying there's minimum volumes that we need to see. I'm not going to read the whole thing to you, but I did want to point out that it's talking about acknowledging the crossing. The only other option would be to ignore the crossing, but staff does not believe this is an appropriate response. These treatments will only be considered if the location is more than 300 feet from the nearest signed and marked pedestrian crossing, and it is believed that there is little potential to redirect pedestrians to a more defined crossing location. And I think these spots on 30th Street that we were talking about basically do meet this criteria. I'm not aware, and maybe you are, of whether there have been any observations or counts of pedestrians crossing at these locations. I think some of the Scott Carpenter Park stuff is likely to happen more in the summer when the pool's in heavy use. But this community member was saying that it also happens with employees parking at the sort of a shared CU, City of Boulder parking lot. So I'm not aware of how much attention we have paid to the crossing, or whether it's just sort of anecdotal that we know that people do. But we certainly do know that we closed that underpass during spring flooding. And so for a regular portion of the year, reliably, we're seeing flooding events that divert multi-use path users right in the middle of 30th Street between Arapahoe and Colorado. And so this really might be a place where we can sort of acknowledge reality. And I think you would have support from that in the current guidelines.
Yeah, thanks for that, Tila. There's certainly a lot to respond to there. I will start with respect to the Boulder Creek Path crossing, and Garrett can chime in here if needed. My understanding is that largely some improvements have been made to the creek such that that's like a once a year, if that, occurrence of the flooding of the trail. So again, it's very irregular. And again, if it were to occur, I think you might get the demand to meet a crossing treatment, but it's only the once a year. So the other times of the year, people aren't expecting people to cross there. And then with respect to the Scott Carpenter Park, there's sort of another debate there, and it becomes very nuanced. My understanding of what's occurring there is that employees and students going to the CU campus are parking in the Scott Carpenter lot because it's free. They don't have to pay. And if they park on the CU side, they have to pay. So it sort of brings up this debate about parking management and one way to mitigate that condition from occurring would be for the park to begin charging to park at the park. And Parks and Rec staff obviously has been against that for their own reasons. But it's my understanding that is the primary interaction of what occurs there. Is it's folks going from west to east versus when the pool overflows. You have the other occurrence where people overflow into the paid parking at the CU lots. But I will say that we are going to do some data collection specifically at the Scott Carpenter location, and we'll do that 2 times, once likely in April or May, definitely before CU lets out for the year, to capture that interaction of people parking on the west side going to the east side to CU. And then we'll do it again, maybe on like a weekend in the summer or a weekday, whatever we find from Parks and Rec staff in their experience of when the pool is most likely to overflow. We'll try to capture one of those days to get the interaction there as well.
Okay, thank you. You would think by now I would learn to not hypothesize about what's causing what, but in any event, I'm glad to hear you're collecting that data, but it still does kind of sound like, whether we pin down the reasons or not, it would still lend itself to be a place where we would consider a crossing treatment because we're unlikely to be diverting pedestrians away from there.
The 30th location becomes quite complex. I think there could be a full study required of alternative, locations of where to put the crossing, and then the crossing type that would be needed as well. Again,
Thank you very much.
Crossing 30th is something we would want to consider very carefully.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Devin. I'm getting some attention. I think that my understanding is Parks and Rec is increasing how often they encourage people to park on the CU side of the street when the pool is really busy. And also advocate that if we do a good job reconstructing 30th Street or spend many millions of dollars, it should lead to more people on foot and on bikes. And if we do a good job with the multimodal infrastructure, we'll see more multimodal users, and then I think it could be more justified with that.
Yeah, and I don't have any other questions, but I think it is, I'm still kind of, it's just hard for me to kind of sit with this idea that people have to kind of, and I'm not speaking specifically to 30th Street. I'm not really in the weeds on that myself, but just the idea that people have to be using something unsafely before something can be put there that's safe. And I hope as much as possible, other kinds of objective standards can be used before it gets to that point. I understand there's decisions between doing it here versus there, and there are reasons. And of course, I want staff expertise to lead us to a lot of those final decisions. But I think as much as possible, having other objective standards for why we do something when we do something. And if there's a problem with yielding, then maybe that's a problem with the design of the crossing. For instance, maybe cars aren't slowed down enough, by the design of the road, things like that. And again, an equity consideration that we know a lot of people simply are ruled out in the first place when something isn't safe for them to use. And so they're never going to demonstrate that they would use it. So it's just something I'm going to keep in mind for future projects if this comes up as a criteria, I think. Yeah, I don't think I have anything further on it today, and appreciate you letting us know about the crossing guidelines and answering our questions.
You're welcome.
Becky, did you have any more matters?
Yeah, sorry, just one more quick thing. I just had a question about, I've wondered this for a while, and I feel like I've been on the board long enough, I can just ask. We of course have a public comment in our meetings, and we receive emails from the public, but I'm not clear, do TAB members respond to every email? Should we respond? Should we not copy each other when we respond? Like, I don't know when is the right time to respond to something or when is not. And, because I know it can be one of the most frustrating things is when you give input to something and then you feel like, it was useless. So I don't want people who come to TAB to feel that way, even though we of course can't address or help with everything. Yeah, so I'm interested in hearing from other board members, like how you handle, when you respond, like, yeah, just interested in feedback.
I feel like some inquiries asking for info, or I typically leave for staff to respond to. And then I don't respond to every email we receive, but sometimes I'll respond just myself to thank people for writing in. I share the concern, here's a resource, whatever it might be, but that's not all the time. Any other feedback from TAB?
Yeah, I feel like we talked about this. We talk about it like every 3 years or so. And it is kind of loosey-goosey. For a while, it felt like there was an expectation from staff to respond substantively, and that was taking a lot of staff time. And I don't get the sense that that's happening as much anymore. And so for a while, I think a lot of TAB members were just like, well, let's wait and see what happens with the, if an official staff person responds. And then we've also always said, if something strikes a particular chord with you as a TAB member, for sure, feel free to jump on there. And there's no harm in CCing I would BCC them. If you want to show other TAB members or staff or something that you have responded and what you've said, there's no problem with that, but just don't try not to open an email chain where a bunch of people can comment back and forth. So just use BCC for that. And then usually, and this is usually in the staff response as well, it contains some language like, I saw your email, I'm just responding for myself. You might hear from other people on this, might hear from other board members or staff members or something, just to make it clear, like you're just reaching out and not necessarily trying to like close that issue, but that you wanted to give them some acknowledgement or feedback or whatever.
Thanks, Tila. Natalie, do you have anything from the staff perspective?
Yeah, I'll add from the staff's perspective. So definitely there was a time several years ago where the expectation was that staff was going to respond to every TAB email. I would say we're on the other end of that spectrum now. So when emails come to the TAB email, my understanding of that is that a community member is trying to share information with TAB. And it's totally appropriate for TAB to then want to bring that up in a board meeting in the public forum where that community member is seeing that, there's something that's being kind of followed through on by TAB. But I'm not expecting staff to respond to that email, but we can be prepared to obviously, similar to what we did with 30th Street tonight, right? Like Becky had some questions about that. We can certainly be prepared to speak to it at the coming TAB meeting, but we won't, because what we found was that like it did become this essentially another place to have a meeting or like to have a forum with community members around issues that were going to TAB or that should be going to TAB. And really, that's not a public forum. We don't want to be conducting ourselves over email that way. And so that's kind of the perspective from staff at this point.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Ryan, I believe you had a couple matters.
Yeah, okay, shifting gears a little bit. So I just wanted to make a connection on two topics today, and to bring them together. On the transit update that Jean was leading, there's some discussion about how we prioritize certain projects, and the favorite topic of mine, because I've said before, and I'll keep probably having to say this, but I really think one thing that will help with effectiveness and efficiency in all of our work together is making clear how proposals or projects are intending to support system goals like mode shift and Vision Zero. And to make the connection, Councilmember Spear presented on DRCOG and the GHG strategy, and how there are now some really concrete elements of what future funding for the city of Boulder could be resting on. And a lot of those, I forgot the elements, but they support or interact with our mode shift and VMT and Vision Zero goals. And just wanted to, maybe it's obvious to others, but just suggest, in case it only struck me, that those might be really nice things to hear about, or at least to try in upcoming, I'm not sure what proposals we have coming up next, but just to consider those DRCOG elements as we, in next month's meeting or the meeting after, as we hear about, as staff might wish to, show a reasoning for projects. So thank you, Councilmember Spear, for that. So that was the first thing. And then the second thing, also something else in the meeting, it gave me an idea. Becky had Well, okay, so sorry, this is on the minutes. And first, I just want to say how great the minutes were, I think, from our last meeting that we approved today. There's just an incredible amount of detail and fidelity in there. And so kudos, I think Meredith is in charge of that still. And thank you, I think it's great. So I don't want to add to the plate, but it did make me think when I heard Becky make a comment about how there was something about, she was saying like, well, I hope council should hear this. And the substance was on like how, I think it was how existing parking mandates can get in the way of some of our, these more project-based proposals. And it just got to me thinking that how TAB fulfills, as we fulfill our role at advising council, you know, we're covering like so much material here at so many different levels. And there's a few nuggets in meetings like this that that I would imagine, you know, council might want to know if we're saying, hey, we hope council hears this. But I don't know that we have a real way that we sort of extract like what came from this meeting that we need council to hear. And I'm not proposing any new process, but I don't know. I just thought that was a really important thing that Becky called out for council, and I agreed that council should hear that. And I just wonder if maybe there's something in the minutes where you can, but this might be a question for Council Member Spear, as our member, or here that is an actual council member, like how they use this to you know, how they consume, if at all, tab information. So I guess I'm not proposing anything as far as process, but I just wanted to draw that out, that I think there's something we might want to think about, like how do we get the nuggets in these meetings to council that we think we want council to hear, when I wouldn't expect them to on their own go just like read all the minutes.
Right. Can I respond to that real quick? I think I would like to put a pin in that one for our retreat. So we're coming into, you know, a new round of appointments, boards and commissions citywide, and then we will probably follow up with our retreat pretty soon after that, I would hope. But I was struck, I was talking to Rachel Friend, Councilmember Friend recently, and it became clear, yeah, definitely they don't go through and read all of it. But she really did not know a whole lot about what was happening at TAB. And I said, yeah, this is something we got to really pin down. And I don't want to put anything more on council, but it might be a role for a chair or vice chair going forward to, if there are some punchy bits, or here's what we did, or just, you know, annotate an agenda, like, and just be like, here's what happened, here was the outcome, here was an important tidbit, so that it's a page or less, and just, you know, as a regular course of our monthly duties, submit something available to council or emailed it to council. And so if they want to read it, they can skim through it without having to plow through the minutes. But I think this is probably more appropriate for our retreat to figure out something like that.
I support that, Tila. Thanks for bringing this up, Brian. Brian, anything else? Any other matters from the board? Future agenda topics, as always, feel free to reach out to myself, Ryan. We can try to get things on the agenda moving forward. Looks like in March, we've got an update on the final Vision Zero action plan. Scott mentioned the snow and ice removal, and then a briefing on citywide department and racial equity work. I'm likely going to miss the March meeting, so Ryan, you're up. And if there's nothing else, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Am I remembering that there's a DCS update phase 2 something or other happening? And we haven't heard anything about for a while. When is that going to come back?
I think we're looking at April. The
Okay.
consultant team is working on that update. And so I believe at this point, we're looking at April.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Chair, I would move to adjourn.
Thank you. Can I get a second?
I'll second.
Thanks, Becky. All those in favor? Unanimous with 5 votes. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Thanks very much.
Have a good night.
Bye.